Oh, wait. 2, 3, and go.
Go live.
Yeah.
Here's the Young Guns show, guys. I mean, this is the show where we talk about all the results that happen in college football, all of these results, the insane results. And we're going to get to it with me from Only Talk Sports, Jeffrey. You got Jackson, you've got Buckeye Mike, and you've got Austin. It's going to be great. And I guess we can get rolling right now. Our first game, the Egg Bowl, Thursday night. Ole Miss, Mississippi State. It delivered. Great game. I mean, I picked Ole Miss to win. And even with the whole Lane Kiffin going to Auburn stuff, it ended up he was not going to Auburn. He stayed at Ole Miss. But Mississippi State got it done because of Ole Miss's inability to get a 2-point conversion. And the timeout situation was bad, and Mississippi State pulled it out. What do you got? What are your thoughts on Mississippi State Ole Miss?
Here's some facts for our audience. Quinshawn Judkins has 1,476 rushing yards, which is now third all time in the SEC freshman rushing yards in a season. The leader, Herschel Walker. The second one, Nick Chubb. And the record that Judkins broke on Thursday night, Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football. And Mississippi State won its 7th game over an AP-ranked opponent again under Coach Mike Leach, the Pirate. All while the Bulldogs have been unranked. No other school has more than 4 wins as an unranked team against ranked opponents in the past 3 seasons. Austin,
so that means they're a really good team. It's undervalued then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just give you my quick thoughts. Mississippi State, good job to you guys. To all our Bulldog supporters out there, Mississippi State Bulldog supporters, good job. You won the Egg Bowl and you showed Ole Miss who you are. I don't get the play at the end, the drive at the end so much as why you would call those timeouts, knowing that you still got to get the 2-point conversion. And the 2-point play, to me, like, why would you call that? The pitch, I get it. It works sometimes. But in that case, I don't think it was a very good call. Some people may say that was the right call. Some don't. But at the end of the day, great job to Ole Miss Mississippi State for covering it up and stopping it. And congratulations to Mike Leach and the Bulldogs on bringing the Egg Cup back.
And how about
to you, Buckeye Mike?
With the fire extinguisher. Oh, man, that was so cool. What was your reaction to that, guys?
So my whole thing goes to, and Austin kind of already touched on it, and I think most people are thinking, what the crap, is poor clock management, which seemed to be a theme in most of the games this past weekend, and decisions that made absolutely no sense. Like, clock management and decisions made, I mean, the 2 timeouts they wasted for a 2-point conversion. How do you not? The standard usually is quarterback goes out there with 2 plays, first of all. One that they want to run, and their kill switch play. You know, the quarterback goes up to the line or goes into the shotgun, looks at the defense. If he doesn't like the way the defense looks compared to their play, he usually does like a kill kind of thing. And that's when they change the play. And that's when you see all the like quarterback bent over and hand communication with the wide receivers. That's when you see that. So that makes absolutely no sense to me as, like, how can you be so hard-headed as we're going to run this play? I don't care how the defense looks. We're going to run this play. And congrats to Mississippi State. I thought the picture after the game with the 2 Mississippi State guys with the trophy imitating the Ole Miss guy that got the penalty after the touchdown from 27. Yeah, the Elijah Moore incident, reenacting that over the trophy. I thought that was funny. But congrats, you guys earned it. You go out and celebrate. the way you want, and by this time it's well past your 24 hours to celebrate. So if these guys go to a bowl game, which I think they most likely are, I think they're 8-4.
Yeah, they're going to a bowl game. But
So-
I'll tell you this, it was a beautiful day in the neighborhood for Will Rogers, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. So I would turn your focus to getting ready for the bowl game and just preparing for that, and hopefully you guys go out on top at a 9-4. But we'll have to wait and see.
My final thoughts on this game, talking about Austin's point of the 2-point conversion play. I had no problems with the 2-point conversion play itself, because if you look at the play, if Jackson Dart takes one more step forward, that defender's going to take one more step closer to him, and then he can just pop that thing over. He panicked, threw it too quick, and that's why it was incomplete, because he batted it down. The play call wasn't the problem. It was the fact that they didn't have that play call before the 2 timeouts. The timeout should have never been called. They should have already had that play. It didn't work, but at least they would have still had a chance to maybe get the ball back if you hadn't have burned the timeouts. That was the mistake that Ole Miss made. They should have never made it. And for a coach like Lane Kiffin to do something like that, it just made people's validation that he was going to Auburn, that his head wasn't in the game. But it didn't happen that way. But that was a massive mistake for a really good coach, and that's what definitely cost them the game. Our next game, starting with the Friday games, you got Tulane and Cincinnati. A lot of people pick Cincinnati because of their home winning streak. For 3 years, they haven't lost at home. But Tulane goes on the road and wins at Nippert Stadium. Unbelievable. I mean, they've had a great season. I mean, Tulane, their only losses, they lost a surprise one to Southern Miss, and they lost to UCF. But they beat Kansas State earlier in the season. That win's really held up because Kansas State's going to the Big 12 championship game. But massive win for the Green Wave. What are your guys' thoughts on this one?
Well, fun little stat. Tulane snapped a 61-game losing streak against AP-ranked opponents, and it was the first time since 1984 that they beat an AP-ranked opponent. And not only that, but they snapped a big winning streak at Cincinnati for home games that Cincinnati's won. But they literally go from worst to first, but 2-10 to 10-2. What a magnificent turnaround by Willie Fritz.
Reminds you of Scott Frost at UCF.
Yeah. Well, he's a lot better than Scott Frost, I suspect. But
I would like to say congratulations to Tulane. What a season they've had. Can we all agree that Tulane has been on a Cinderella carpet ride, so to speak, up to this point? I mean, they just keep finding ways to win. I mean, after the way they beat Cincinnati, and Cincinnati being the overwhelming favorite in a lot of people's eyes, like you mentioned, Jeffrey, and for them to win the game and clinch a spot in the American Championship, I mean, that's a congratulations to them. And I'm just happy for them overall, because they're a program that has had their struggles, like a lot of programs have. And just congratulations. And what about Lou Fickell going to Wisconsin, fellas? I mean, that's another headline coming out of this game. Was he not focused? Was he already thinking about Wisconsin?
more than likely.
Answers we may never get.
But yeah, I mean, I think that Luke Fickell's going to stay a pretty long time at Wisconsin until Ohio State opens up. That's what's going to happen.
My fear is that could be sooner than you think. I don't think it will, but we'll touch on that later. But it could. I'm not saying I think it will, but it could be. Depending on the powers that be, it could be sooner than you think.
Well, to the powers that be, I say don't be so quick to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Final thought on Tulane, because obviously unfortunately, Tulane gets a bit overshadowed by the Cincinnati stuff with Luke Fickell. But Tulane, to me, I watched Tulane last year, and a lot of people forget, even though they went 2-10, Tulane almost beat Oklahoma last year at the beginning of the season. Tulane was a good football team last year, but injuries that hurt the team. They had a lot of injuries. Michael Pratt's a great quarterback, and he was banged up last year. He's healthy. He played fantastic this season. Their team was healthier. That's why they were good. They were good last year. They wouldn't have gone 10-2, but they were a really solid team last year. The injuries just bit them all season long. So, again, kudos to Tulane. But Luke Fickell going from Cincinnati to Wisconsin, I mean, I basically already touched on this in my video earlier today, and I basically just said that I think that it's a good decision. It's a good move. I'm kind of shocked. To me, Luke Fickell was the last I didn't think he was going to go to Wisconsin. I thought that he was going to hang out at Cincinnati, join the Big 12, and hang out a while longer and then go somewhere. But I think it's going to work out. But it's going to be interesting to see because, him being in the Big 10 again and him having to play against Ohio State, it's going to be very interesting to see how that matches up in the years to come. But I think overall that is a good decision. But what a game for Tulane, and it sucks for Cincinnati because I hope they don't take a step back as a program now with him gone, because he was a great coach building them up. And like you said, Buck, before we went on, Cincinnati fans should be happy for what he did, because before Luke Fickell, you were a bad program, and now you've been really good and really relevant. So don't take away what he did just because he left. Unfortunately, there's just better jobs in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Well, and it was
but what an incredible job to Tulane too. I know you just touched on it, Jeffrey, but I'd like to give them props on it too. They were 2-10 last year, and now here they are playing for a conference championship. What a heck of a turnaround. We've seen that a lot this year.
My turn. First of all, hey, Cincinnati, you guys had a good time with Luke Fickell. You don't even know the stress that a coach moving on causes. Ohio State's had to deal with that 4 times in 12 years. Between the end of Tress, the 1 year with Luke, even though he did stay under Urban Meyer leaving, and maybe another coming soon. Anyway, congrats to Tulane. I didn't think he had it in you. I was looking too favorably towards Cincinnati because they were one of the 2 home game winning streaks that were snapped yesterday.
Can anybody guess when the last time it was that they lost a home game prior to Friday?
I know it was in 2019. I can't remember.
It was like November 2017.
Hmm?
It was 2017.
What was the exact date?
I thought it was 2019. It's been 3 years. They lost a home game in 2019.
Was it 19? I thought it was 17.
It was set at the bottom of the screen on ESPN. So, I'm just going off that.
All right. I believe it was November 10th, 2017, but could be wrong,
Doesn't matter.
Onward to the Baylor Bears and the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, Baylor and Texas. This one was interesting because we were, all of our picks were going wrong on Friday. All the games that we thought the teams were going to win, a lot of them didn't win. But a lot of people gave Texas one more shot, even though Texas has been very inconsistent this season. But they were able to pull out a win over Baylor, who arguably has been even more inconsistent than Texas. And that's why, the only reason why I picked Texas, because Texas has been a little bit, just by a little bit more consistent than Baylor. They got it done at home. And Texas, even though they've been disappointing compared to what Texas fans wanted, they still have gone 8-4. They've still had a solid season. Could have been better, could have been worse, but they're 8-4. And Baylor, they've definitely taken a step back. They're not as good of a team this year. I still think Dave Aranda is a great coach, but they've dropped off. So what are your guys' thoughts on Texas Baylor?
Well, go ahead, Mike.
I only saw highlights of this. It looked to me like Texas was just more dominant throughout and did pretty well on the defense for once. I only half-heartedly picked Baylor because as a joke, and there was something in me that said, even though Baylor's a joke of a program this year, they tend to be more reliable than Texas. But I give props to Texas. Congrats on the win. I should have picked you, but that's just how the dice rolled. So congrats.
Yeah.
Congrats, Texas.
I just want to say congratulations to all of our Longhorn fans. Hook 'em. And Bijan Robinson, he's a monster. He just shredded that defense, Baylor defense apart. I mean, they couldn't stop him all day long. And he's done that to a lot of defenses. So Baylor, you're not the only one that's had to deal with it. And the thing about it too is if you're a Texas fan, it has to be frustrating knowing that if you can get this team that you saw against Baylor and the team that you saw against Alabama, if you can get those two and combine those performances and get it on a consistent basis, Texas is looking real good for the future. But you need some consistency. Not to take away from your win. Congratulations. Congratulations, Texas. And Baylor, well, they came off that heartbreak and it showed. That they came out a little flatter than normal, but they hung in there. Just too much Bijan Robinson at the end.
Oh, yeah. And we'll be covering a little bit more on Texas on a later game here in a little bit, which I believe our next game on the list is the North Carolina Tar Heels and the North Carolina State Wolfpack.
Buckeye Mike, did you say any thoughts on Texas Baylor?
Yeah, I gave a few.
Okay.
The only last thing I want to say real quick is Texas fans make no sense to me because you're having roughly the same production under Sark as you are Tom Herman, but yet you guys wanted to run Tom Herman out of town over the same production. So just think about that. I think it's a boosters thing all over again with Tom Herman, like it was with Carson. But that's just my thought, and I'll leave it at that.
Or their expectations are being lowered a bit, like Nebraska's, by each coach that does worse. You kind of see it bleeding before your eyes that you're getting worse. I think Texas is going to get better because they're really talented. And yes, like Austin pointed out, and we've pointed out, if Texas plays like this all the time, like they did against Kansas, that performance needs to be pointed out as well. They just demolished Kansas. Texas can play like that. They can be an 11-1, 10-2, 12-0 team next year, but they're so inconsistent. I haven't seen a Texas team, me watching football in my lifetime that's been consistent. They've just been an inconsistent team for decades, so they're going to have to stop being inconsistent if they want to be good. Up to our next game.
Hold on. And I know we need to move on quickly. I want to what's the word? I want to retract your statement because to me, Texas was good in the Vince Young era. It bled over to the Colt McCoy era, which was good. And then there was a drop off. And then once Tom Herman came in, I felt like it started to go back up. And now where Texas screwed up was letting Sam Ehlinger, after that Super Bowl win with a bunch of opt-outs in Georgia, say, "You're back." No, you weren't back.
No, I was talking about games that I've watched. Vince Young and Colt McCoy, I was a little kid. I don't remember that stuff that well. I was talking about since I've been watching football, like in the early 2010s religiously, they've been average. They've just been average, 8-4 almost every year. When it was Charlie Strong, when it was Tom Herman, now here it's the same thing. It's just the same thing. That's what I was talking. I know I was alive when Vince Young was at Texas, but I was little, so yeah. But next game, NC State and North Carolina. Obviously, I was a little upset. Wanted North Carolina to come back around, but it is what it is. North Carolina really dropped the ball. I mean, they look from a team that maybe had an outside of all outside chances of making the playoff if they won out. They lost to Georgia Tech, and then you lose to NC State. 2 games that you should have won. The offense kind of sputtered a bit after Drake May for Heisman was starting to finally get its deserved bringing up because he was playing so well. But they really faltered down the stretch, and NC State beat him. And North Carolina's got a problem with, obviously, a field goal kicker. He missed 2 field goals in the game, including the one that would have tied it up in double overtime. But NC State got the win, and really a big win for NC State considering the fact that, Devin Leary being gone, they've been really struggling. So what are your guys' thoughts on NC State, North Carolina?
Oh, here's a quote from Drake May. This was from September 20th, 2022. And this is what he said. Quote, whether you want to admit it or not, growing up in Carolina, you're going to be a Carolina fan. Some people may say NC State, but really people who go to NC State just can't get in Carolina, unquote. Now, this is the 5th win for NC State in the last 7 games against North Carolina.
Mm.
Now, was that really a good idea to be running your mouth at your rival there, Mr. Madden?
I'm not disagreeing with what your assessment. He shouldn't have said it, but it's not wrong. The only part that's wrong is saying that you're not an NC State fan. You can be an NC State fan and not even go to the school. Where he's right is that North Carolina's academics blowing NC State out of the water. Yeah. So if you're not smart enough to go to North Carolina, you're going to go to NC State. That's what he meant.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have said it, but that he wasn't talking about football. He angled it like it was a football comment, which is why he shouldn't have worded it that way. But he is not wrong. North Carolina is way better at academics. That's why when they're saying North Carolina, the Big Ten with all this expansion, it makes sense because the academics are there. North Carolina, the SEC don't, because the SEC's academics are not as good as the Big Ten's.
Well, and also kudos to NC State on a hard-fought victory in double overtime. And I'm very sad that, Devin Leary couldn't be able to celebrate that victory with you. But, however, this is the first time in school history that they've had 4 quarterbacks record at least 1 win in a season. How impressive is that?
Which is amazing.
Oh, yeah. And all the injuries you've had in this very disappointing season, man. It's like, but at least the disappointing regular season ended with a bang against North Carolina for the 5th time in 7 years.
Yeah, I would just like to say congratulations to NC State. I mean, what a victory. I mean, I watched this game and I was on the edge of my seat, and I don't root for either of these teams. This was just a good football game. I know if you have an interest in it, it gets heated, but for me as a unbiased fan, it was a good football game. And for NC State, for them to have all the injuries, to have all the turmoil that they had, and to still string together this win against their rival, against North Carolina, against Big Brother, shows what kind of heart you have. And for North Carolina, crap in the bed back-to-back weeks, you can't be doing that if you expect to be a really good team and competitive. You can't lose to Georgia Tech and then lose to your rival NC State with their 4th stringer. You just can't do that. North Carolina, I'm disappointed in you because I expected you to win the last 2 games and have a date with Clemson and look strong, but I guess you feel that wasn't in the cards for you. But congratulations to the Wolfpack on a hard-fought victory, and hope you win your bowl game for all of our Wolfpack fans out there.
Unfortunately, this shows, though, the ACC had a really bad season. And you know how, the media will talk about how poor the Pac-12 has been lately until this year, of how they've just been so bad. The ACC is having a terrible season. It has been awful for them. I mean, obviously, they've got decent teams, but Clemson's supposed to be the headliner. They're out of the playoff discussion. North Carolina dropped the ball at the end. And that's it. It's just a really, really struggling season for the ACC as a whole.
The ACC is out of the playoff discussion altogether. I mean, that's
the only Power 5 conference that has that problem. right now.
Oh yeah, that's not.
You
good.
can't drop the ball to Georgia Tech.
No.
You just can't.
No.
You got any thoughts, Buckeye Mike? Did you say anything about this game?
Not yet. So, congratulations, NC State. The one thing I would say is this game was so tight that we can't say necessarily that North Carolina was looking ahead and just thought we can just steamroll them. Now, if this was like Ohio State, Michigan, you could be like a score like that. You could, like, if this game would have been that score, you could have said maybe they were looking ahead. This game was tight, double overtime. I mean, what happened? You dropped the ball.
Yep. So it really hurts, like I said, the ACC's perspective. You know, obviously if Clemson had have beaten South Carolina, which we'll get to, Clemson's chance of making the playoff would have still been there. And this would have hurt Clemson because North Carolina would not have been as good of a win if they had beaten them. But both teams lost, and it was a really bad day for the ACC. Last 2 weeks for North Carolina, and tough loss for the Tar Heels. Our next game is one of the
one more
shockers.
thing real fast, Jeffrey. Is the ACC is like the Pac-12 from years past, where once Oregon lost their 2 games, the Pac-12 was non-existent. This is what the ACC is going through now.
And that's
Once
basically
Clemson loses their two, they're done. ACC don't matter anymore.
Which we'll most definitely get to in a little bit.
And that's basically what I was meaning when I said how the media the last few years has basically trashed the Pac-12 for being bad and they're garbage. That's basically what the ACC is, but no one's saying it.
There's roughly only 2 conferences that could get away with having a potential representative in a playoff with 2 losses. It's really 1, but depending on when you have that other loss, it's 2 conferences. It's the SEC, which is the king of our sport, and it's the Big Ten.
And really, like you said, it's basically the SEC. But I'm just saying that the ACC is having a really, really, really bad season, but no one's really wanting to admit it, like nationally, that the ACC is the Pac-12 of the last few years. They should say it. If you're going to treat the Pac-12 like
100%,
garbage,
Jeffrey.
then the ACC is basically just as bad. But they're not saying it, and they should, because it's bad.
Totally.
Now,
go ahead.
Since we're talking about this, I know we want to wrap up.
I was going to go to Nebraska, Iowa, but then Austin made that point. I'm sorry.
Just one question. Because of Clemson's basic dominance over their stretch, can't we roughly say that the ACC has been not good that whole time? Because if you have the same champion over and over and over and over for 6 to 7 years in a row, that just means you have one powerhouse in a conference full of babies with lollipops in their mouths.
You can make that claim for the Big Ten too with Ohio State's dominance, but at least Penn State and Michigan were extremely competitive, and they still appeared strong. The ACC has not had that whatsoever. That's the difference. I agree with you 110%. Now on to Nebraska,
Speaking of the Big
Iowa.
Ten,
This game right here was one of the shockers of the week because I don't think anybody picked Nebraska to win this game. Iowa is awful on offense, but their defense finds a way to win most games. And Nebraska is they're the team that always finds a way to lose. How they found a way to win this one, no clue, but Nebraska got it done, and they finished their season at a roaring 4-8. They're better than last year. You've improved without Scott Frost. That's why you got rid of him. So, again, kudos to Nebraska for getting the Heroes Trophy and all that junk. So, what are you guys' thoughts on Nebraska, Iowa?
Boy, Iowa's offense pulled a Jekyll and Hyde on us, gentlemen. One week they look like they found it and they're getting it together, and then the next week they put a goose egg out.
I put loosely
Really?
They found it. Spencer Pete is throwing for 190, 200 yards as they found.
But here's the thing, though, too. We have to remember Nebraska. Nebraska is awful. And you can't score on them? Oh, that's just awful. Like, congratulations to the Husker fans. Hopefully you've got with Matt Rule coming in, which is some great news if you're a Nebraska fan because of what he did at Baylor, take them to the Big 12 championship and competing for a playoff spot in 2018, 2019. I mean, hopefully he could get Nebraska back to their winning ways. But congratulations to Nebraska. But just for Iowa, you just stunk the bed up. I'm sorry. Go ahead, whoever's next. I'm done.
I'm next. So all Iowa would have had to do to clinch the Big Ten West was to win against Nebraska for a 8th straight year. But that's why they play the games. So Nebraska beating Iowa was pretty good, but not good enough to be a full-time head coach. As we saw with Bo Pelini, we saw that Mickey Joseph, but great hire by getting a Matt Rule. And the question now with Iowa is, do they keep Brian Ferentz? And if they keep him, will he be demoted? What?
My turn. So, congrats to Nebraska fans. Well deserved. There's one thing that you guys haven't mentioned, and I'm surprised nobody mentioned it. Maybe you were going to.
I probably am.
Petrus got hurt in the first half.
Yeah, he did.
There was granted, Petrus, in my opinion, stinks like sewer water. He's not very good, and that was obviously shown by the backup because Nebraska got up 24-0, and then all of a sudden it just clicked with Iowa, and Iowa was like, "Hey, we can score." They couldn't stop them until they were just barely too far ahead with the 24 points, but they were able to run all over them. So Nebraska, Matt Rule, I know you're not watching, but if you do happen to watch this, you need to fix the run defense to begin with. Replace the defensive coordinator, and focus on stopping the run. And I think the backup for Iowa is actually pretty good. So there seems to be something promising there. To touch on Jackson's point of Brian Ferentz, if they do keep him, maybe there's not a demotion, or maybe there is. But if there's not, then there should be a pay cut. For sure.
Yeah.
But, I mean, congrats to both teams, really, especially Iowa. You guys looked like you were dead in the water. I told you were not good at all. And I still feel like I'm right about that. But you came back, almost pulled it off. But that's all I got.
Before we move on to the next game, I got a few more thoughts on this game. For one thing, Spencer Petras, just to give him a little bit of credit, not much, but I think a lot of people, overstate how bad he is. He's bad. I've said this ad nauseum on so many different shows. He is bad. But if he was back in 1980, he would be like every other quarterback, mostly, except the greats. I mean, he would fit right in because the way they play offense is 1980. It's tight ends, ground and pound, all that stuff, fullbacks, whatever. Yeah. So he's doing what he's asked to do. It's Brian Ferentz who's the problem. It's Kirk Ferentz who's the problem because he won't see that his son is a problem. It's Spencer Petras is bad, but Brian Ferentz is worse. The end. It is. There's no doubt in my mind that if Spencer Petras had a good offensive coordinator, he could be decent. And I mean, I loosely say decent. He wouldn't be good, but he'd be decent. He's bad because their offense is bad. The whole thing is bad. It's run poorly. On Matt Rule, we could have a whole other live stream about coaching, the coaching decisions. And maybe we can do this after, some of these games. Maybe we can do one. But my quick thoughts on Matt Rule is that he turned around Temple. He turned around Baylor. He couldn't fix the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, nobody could fix the Carolina Panthers, and it's much harder to win in the NFL.
They blew it all up.
I think he'll do well at Nebraska. I could be wrong. I don't think necessarily might be a slam dunk. He's going to struggle, but if they give him time, I think he will get it fixed. Unlike Scott Frost, I do think he'll get it fixed because he turned around Baylor and Temple.
When he first came into Baylor, he didn't have any coaches that were familiar with the state of Texas, except like one or two. But he was able to have a great relationship with those Texas high school coaches. So I'm going to tell you this, Jeffrey. I think it's going to work out at Nebraska, to be quite honest.
I do too.
I'll be one better. He could win a Big Ten title there.
So I have a quick question. Go ahead, Buckeye Mike.
I was going to say two things real quick. One, Jackson, I agree, as long as, and it's just my bias coming out, as long as he doesn't have to do it against Ohio State, he can gladly go win a Big Ten title. Two, he signed an 8-year deal. So Nebraska, don't be stupid about this. Give him time. Let him develop everything and see the progress come. Let him have majority of his 8-year contract. If you're going to fire him, wait till year 6, year 7. But I'm telling you, just wait and you will see progression. You've already seen progression with one Scott Frost replacement. Matt Rule, in your eyes, he's really good in my eyes, but in your eyes, Matt Rule is king because he's amazing at turning programs around. He took Temple from 1-11 to what, a 7-8 win team, 9 wins?
No, they won 10 games.
He took Baylor from 2 wins to 11.
Maybe that's what it was.
And he won the conference title in his final year at Temple.
Mm-hmm.
So the man can win with any kind of coaching staff, and he's proven it. Just give him a chance.
I think it's going to work. The only reason why I'm cautiously optimistic is because we're talking about Nebraska.
Yeah.
And it's scary. It's a scary place right now. I think it's going to work. I think it's going to work, but it's not going to start off like he's going to just shoot on the motorcycle and he's driving 90 miles an hour. It's going to take him some time to do it. Like you said, Buckeye Mike, and I'm afraid that they'll axe him too quick. Do not axe him too quick. You got to give him time.
Why I said that is it makes your program and university look bad when you're going through 3 coaches now in what, a 4-year span, 5-year span
right now.
Yeah, Auburn is dealing with the same thing, and it's making your program fail. It's making you look bad, and it's making the program look like nobody wants to come here because they don't, because you're not having success. You're not having stability. In my opinion, I'll say this real quick. In my opinion, Nebraska, you never should have hired Scott Frost in the first place. Because we've seen that hiring somebody that graduated from your school doesn't work. It didn't work with Luke Fickell. Granted, I don't hold that against him anymore because he was a holdover. It's not going to – I hope it does, but I'm afraid it's not going to work at Arizona State, and we can talk about that later. Cadillac Williams didn't even really have a chance, but obviously it didn't work in Auburn's eyes. Otherwise, they would have hired him on after yesterday as the coach.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I just think that Nebraska is in really bad shape right now, and it's going to take them some time. I think Matt Rule can get it done. Give him time. I think it will work, but don't be Auburn. You're not Auburn. Just don't do it. Don't be like Auburn and keep firing coaches, because the more you do it, your program is just getting devalued more and more and more, because you saw Bo Pelini. He was 8-4. He was Tom Herman. They got mad about that. All Nebraska wants to do is make a bowl game. If Matt Rule makes a bowl game, don't suddenly expect him to win the Big Ten. Just
he's not going
raise the ladder
for now.
So that's what Nebraska fans need to just be very patient with Matt Rule, and I think it will work out in the end. Next game, we got the last game on Friday, Florida State. This was the only other game that all of us got right. I think all of us picked Florida State. Florida State, that play call, that call by the refs at that pass interference just blows my mind. I mean, it's like I never want to say that the refs, it was a bad call. It was a mistake. But you can't call interference on a fourth down. You can't do it. I mean, you just cannot. Like that just makes people question refereeing, literally. I mean, like the commentators said in the game, they've been letting them play all game. It was a physical game. They were hitting all over each other, but then hardly any touching at all. And then you call interference on the basically final play of the game. Shouldn't have been called. So I'm glad Florida State pulled it out for that reason, because I didn't care who won. But when that call happened, I'm like, no, Florida State needed to win the game. Because, again, nothing against Florida, but that was a terrible call. And Florida State got the win. And Mike Norvell, I'm not saying Willie Taggart probably wouldn't have worked out at Florida State, probably. But they fired him really quick. I'm glad they gave Mike Norvell another year, because I thought he was going to get fired after the second season. And you gave him one more year, kind of like you're talking about Buckeye with Matt Rule. Give him more time. And you see what Florida State, they're reaping the benefits. They have had a great season. In Florida, average season for Billy Napier, especially considering when you beat Utah, people were saying that they were going to win 9-10 games. They really struggled down the stretch. But good win for Florida State. What are your guys' thoughts on this game?
Well, here's a little stat. The 2022 Florida State game was not only the first ever game in the history of the rivalry to be played on Black Friday, it was also the highest scoring game in the rivalry's history. With both combined, they had 83 points. And Florida State is on its longest winning streak since the 2016 season. Right now, they are on a 5-game winning streak. And they ended a 3-game losing streak to the Florida Gators. They didn't play in 2020 because for obvious reasons.
Yeah. There was just no defense in this game. It was whoever's offense gave out first, and it was Florida's. They just looked like they got tired at the end. I mean, and the PI call too, Jeffrey. That was a bad call. Like, rivalry game, just let it play out. I mean, the officials don't need to decide every game. I know at the end there was also a face mask at the end that didn't get called. They let it go. Like, if you're going to call that PI, call the face mask too. But congratulations to Florida State. They won a shootout. Jordan Travis he's showing some flashes of being really, really good. Anthony Richards, he played a really good game. He just
were awesome.
Ran out of gas.
Those Jordan Travis runs were awesome, man. Like, beautifully done. And John Jansen has a question for us. Matt Rule coaches Carolina this season. Will he do a better job? It is easy, better job at college. Is it easy to go from NFL to college or college to pro? Urban Meyer struggled at the pro level. Do most? Is that most?
Yes.
It's common. Nick Saban went through the same struggle. He was at LSU, won a national title. Then Urban Meyer, and now I would assume maybe this would be different if you chose a different team to go coach in the pros, and maybe not. You got to realize Saban and Matt Rule and Urban Meyer all went to the NFL to coach the bottom feeders in the NFL. Saban went to Miami. Miami hasn't been good until late. Matt Rule went to Carolina. And Urban Meyer went to Jacksonville. They're all bottom feeder teams.
And Steve Spurrier struggled in the pros. Bud Wilkinson struggled in the pros. But here are college coaches that have succeeded in the pros. Harbaugh did a great job at the 49ers. Jimmy Johnson, man, he did a wonderful job there. And Tommy Protho, I believe, did a great job.
Pete Carroll's been doing pretty good.
His first 2 tries in the NFL, Patriots, Jets, not so hot. But at the Seahawks, great job, especially this year in the year without Russell Wilson. His first year in 2010, they won the NFC West with a losing record, and they were able to beat the defending Super Bowl champion Saints.
I'm going to go ahead, Jackson, sir.
And Barry Switzer, I would guess, is a success. Sorry, I just joined. I heard you talk, but it's okay, Johnny. More the merrier, man. Thank you for coming on.
It shows if you give them time, who knows what can happen.
What you want to say, Jeffrey?
I'm just trying to say that I'm to answer John's question. In my opinion, that the reason why it's harder in the NFL is because in the NFL, every team has the exact same amount of dollar bills. In college, it's not how it works. I mean, it is as simple as that. When you go to a program like Nick Saban, how much did he win at Michigan State? 7-8 games. Why? Because that's Michigan State's ceiling most years. He can win at Alabama because they have better resources. At the NFL level, every program's the same. You have the same amount of dollar bills. It's much harder to win. It proves actually if you're a legitimately great coach, if you can win at the NFL. I understand the bottom dweller team's argument, but you got the same amount of money. All you got to do is trade. All you got to do is get players into your team in the NFL. They haven't been able to do it. At college, it's easier because a lot of these schools, it's tilted their way already with how everything is. That's why it's easier.
Well, and this would be the last point so we can get started into our Saturday games. But the other thing is the NFL, and I guess maybe not so much nowadays because at both levels they're making money. But in the NFL, you're making money, and you're making more money than you are currently in college. And so that could, and I would assume maybe does make the players feel like, all right, look, I'm a professional, you're a professional, but don't talk to me like I'm a college kid. You can't bring that same kind of system and belief over to the pros because in college they have to listen to the coaches or they get benched or they could enter the transfer portal. In the pros, they can basically let's say Jeffrey is my coach and I'm the pro player and Jeffrey tells me to do something. Guess what, coach? I don't want to do it. Screw you. And that's the difference. They can tell the coach to screw off and the team just not listen to him. And then the locker room just falls apart. And that, I think, is what happened with Texas A&M. The locker room is just falling apart.
Oh, I agree 100%. That is a great point. And see, but kind of NIL is a byproduct of that because you got to imagine that with NIL, the players in college are starting to act more like pro players. The
That's what I'm saying.
portal is like being traded. It's almost like at A&M, some of the locker room is giving up on Jimbo, and it's like a screw you moment thing, like you're saying. That makes 100% sense because that's the only reason why everybody's mad at Jimbo. Because like you got the top 10 recruiting class, you got all this booster money, you got all this, and you're going 5-7. So that's why they're mad. But yeah, it makes complete sense. You're right on that. But again, kudos to Florida State. And again, Austin, to your point, I was going to say this as well, that you are right about the face mask call. The only reason why I wasn't as upset about the face mask call is because the pass interference shouldn't have been called. So it kind of balanced itself out. Both were bad calls. One was a no call. One shouldn't have been called. So it evened out. But it is what it is. Florida State, they were just a little bit better. Both teams played great. But if Anthony Richardson's going to be an NFL quarterback, he's going to have to bring it every single game because he was the epitome of inconsistency all season long. Sometimes he looked like that top 10 draft pick, and at other times he just did not. So, again, kudos to Florida State. And yes, John, Matt Rule will probably do better at Nebraska. He's already proven it. I'm just saying that Nebraska needs to be consistent. They need to be consistent. Texas needs to be consistent. These are programs that are just inconsistent. Miami's inconsistent. These programs that died in the early 2000s are just inconsistent now. They have to get back to winning all the time, the stability, and that's what they need.
True.
Yeah. Matt Rule can have – last thing on this, but Matt Rule can have success, and so can Sark. And so can all these other coaches that are kind of up in the air or just getting started with the programs. Matt Rule has proven himself. All he needs is time, and he needs people competent enough that can run the system the way he wants it, and that are going to, be there the whole time with him and take his side and be like, okay, you want to run it this way. I know how to run it this way. We can run this kind of offense or defense. He just needs to be able to have his own class, because when he comes in, he's dealing with Scott Frost kids. So he needs to be able to cycle through the Scott Frost kids and have his own kids coming in. And he needs to have that pillow, so to speak, of, okay, I'm in a learning spot. So if I have my first year 4-8, my second year's 4-8, and then I have a 6-6 year, I'm okay. I'm not like, oh my God, I'm on a hot seat and I need to have a better season and have like at least an 8-win season my fourth year. I'm repeating myself at this point. You just got to give him time.
They did it with Scott Frost.
Yeah. But
He
yeah,
just never won.
onward to the Paul Bunyan-ats between the Minnesota Golden Gophers and the Wisconsin Badgers. Now, anybody remember when the last time Minnesota beat Wisconsin in consecutive years prior to yesterday? Buckeye Mike.
93 and 94.
Correctamundo. All right. Jeffrey, what was your takeaway from Minnesota, Wisconsin?
Well, I picked Minnesota to beat Iowa, and they didn't. So I was very afraid to pick them in this game. But Wisconsin's been up and down. They've been all over the place. So I picked Minnesota again, and they pulled through. They almost let Wisconsin come back at the end, but they ended that game because I only saw like toward the end of that game because I was scrolling through all the games and I
Oh
just
boy,
flipped over.
I hope
the
you
ending
get to
of
it.
that game had my mind. It was almost like a derail all over again. My mind was like melting apart. I'm watching this just unfold. First and goal at the 5. Then you have a holding that takes you back 10 yards. You have no timeouts. The coaches are screaming at them. The players are all like that. The quarterback's talking to the linemen. The running back's talking to the receivers. They're trying to get all huddled up. They can't get set. False start, flinching, false start. They got all the way pushed back to the 30. That was awful. Wisconsin would have had a chance if all that hadn't happened. But Minnesota, they pulled it out. PJ Fleck didn't have to have the angry face that he had against Iowa. He was able to get a win. So Minnesota's had quietly a good season. I know that, probably some Minnesota fans wanted better, but they've had a pretty good season. And Wisconsin has really struggled, and now they're probably getting Luke Fickell. So it's going to be really interesting. So what are your guys' takeaways here?
You kind of touched on it, Jeffrey, the Wisconsin penalties at the end. My goodness. You have to be more disciplined than that, guys. I mean, you have first and goal at the 5, and then all of a sudden it's first and goal to like the 20. What in the world are you teaching these kids? Like, I get it. Like, if the hold, I can understand it. Maybe you weren't sure your quarterback was running or something. It happens. But the false starts, you can't be having those. 2 of them back to back. Oh, no. Because in the NFL, they will make you run laps for that. But in Wisconsin, they just shot themselves in the foot on that. Congratulations to Minnesota. They pulled it out. They get to roll the boat, and they get to keep the axe.
Oh, and Jim Leonhard, I wonder what's going to happen with him now, because I know he was, they were talking about him being head coach at one point, but then that Minnesota loss, I think, hurt any shot of him being full-time. But I do have some career advice for Jim Leonhard if you're watching this, which you're probably not, but you should. Go to work for Nick Saban or Kirby Smart. They will help you become a head coach within the snap of a finger.
I think we need to go be an assistant for Kirby Smart or Nick Saban. Then, like, we need to keep doing the show, and we're live, doing the show, and it's like we got the headset on. Go down the field, whatever. Like defensive guy, like Buckeye, you be the defensive guy, and I'll be the wide receivers coach because I can, I'm pretty quick. So we could all get position jobs for Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, and then we'll be head coaches in no time, man. I mean, that's great advice.
I know you're joking, but it has always been a dream of mine to be a football coach.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would love to be a football coach. I don't think anybody take me seriously. You never
I
play
would.
football.
I would, and then when they come over, I'd be like, "You listen to this guy. He's your coach. I don't care if you don't believe in him and you don't want to listen to him. He is your boss. You listen to him." LOL.
I know, right?
I mean, Jackson's not wrong. I mean, Saban, I think more than Kirby, Saban has proved himself that come work for me, eventually you'll be a head coach of where you want to be, or you'll get the job you want.
Yeah, Nick Saban Jobs. That should be his name, man. Nick
Okay.
Saban Jobs.
And one little coach we'll definitely touch on to a little bit when we get to it. But, it's not going to be the Nets game, I'll tell you that. Your team, Jeffrey, the old Oaken Bucket.
One of my teams. One of my teams. And two of them lost. North Carolina went down, but old Indiana. I will say that, I mean, I love Tom Allen's energy. It just draws me to him so hard, man. But this is one of those games where I can't blame Tom Allen in any way. Because, like, a lot of times you can blame Tom Allen. He's not, like, the smartest coach in the world. He's an energy guy, but he doesn't, like, have the knowledge of some coaches. But Dexter Williams was a difference maker for Indiana. Since he's entered in the Ohio State game for Indiana quarterback, Indiana went from scoring no points in that game to 14 points. Then they play Michigan State and they win on the road with Dexter Williams. Put up 39 points, their most of the season. And then he's playing against Purdue and they're up 7-0. And then he goes down with a leg injury. Don't know what it is. It could be ACL, it could be broken leg. I hope it's not, but it probably is. And prayers for Dexter Williams. But that hurt the game because Indiana's offensive line is below average. Connor Bazelak is a statue. I think the guy can play a little bit, but he's a statue. He stands in the pocket, he can move, and then if he's rushed at all, his throws are just 10 feet over everybody's head. So Indiana, they lost the game with Dexter Williams. They got knocked out. Kudos to Purdue, they got it done, but they weren't really that impressive. Indiana would have been tit for tat, and maybe even won if Dexter Williams was playing at quarterback. But Purdue, you get your crack to win the Big Ten against Michigan. See if you can do it. We'll see if you can make Buckeye Mike happy and somehow beat him 55-0 and knock him out of the playoff. But well, probably not. But again, Purdue, you got the win, but you got help along the way. A little bit of help, injury help.
And you clinched the Big Ten West Division. Finally, somebody clinched that division.
Somebody had to do it.
Yeah, that was like a carousel.
Huh?
So, are we talking Indiana, Purdue, or
We're
like,
talking Indiana, Purdue.
all right, so I took like half a page of notes on the last one. So all I will say about that is Graham Mertz, I don't know if you're a senior or a junior. If you're a junior, just leave. Just enter the draft. Go away. Luke Fickell, if he's still there when you get there, don't let him be your starter. He's better than Petrus, but he stinks. And the defenses were pretty good in that game because it's low scoring enough as a defensive battle. Now, as far as Indiana, Purdue, oh my God. Okay. Dexter Williams was the key. Dexter Williams, if he hadn't gotten hurt, Indiana would have won the game. I guarantee it. Once he got hurt, it was over. Purdue was going to win. That's all I have for that.
Yeah, I'll just touch on it real fast. Indiana was giving Purdue give them the business. They were giving them a challenge. But then when that injury happened, like you said, Jeffrey, then Purdue kind of took over, and then they finally pulled ahead enough, and then Indiana just couldn't come back. Congratulations to Purdue. You get to play Michigan for the Big Ten championship, and who knows, miracles could be in order. Maybe Purdue wins the Big Ten this year.
If they do, it doesn't necessarily knock out Michigan from the playoff. They're basically a lock no matter what, like Georgia.
I never
And
said that. I
also,
just said miracles
true,
could be in
true,
order.
true. And also, as sad as it makes me to say this, Jeffrey, I think it was a broken leg. But like you said, I don't think there's been any confirmation.
Mhm.
But I do believe, I think it was a broken leg, which sucks.
Yeah. Jane, how do you pronounce your name, Mister?
I'm just gonna go James Scott, man.
Yeah. That's a funny way to spell it, but I like it. I like it very much. I believe Luke Fickle is smart enough to play the guy who best fits the scheme. Look for someone to jump into the portal. Look for some to jump into the portal. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, because, like, to me, the backup quarterback for Wisconsin is what got them back into the game,
Oh yeah.
because they were down, I think, by like 10 or so points at one point. And then when I was watching the highlights, all of a sudden, Graham Mertz, who never should have been the starter, in my opinion,
Yeah.
wasn't in the game, and it was this random backup quarterback, and all of a sudden, it's a dogfight.
Mm.
Totally, man.
I think the only reason you have Graham Mertz being better than Spencer Petras is because of the fact Graham Mertz has had like 2 games where he looked good. His first game against Illinois, and then the game earlier this year where he had like 5 touchdowns. And it's like Spencer Petras has never had it. So Graham Mertz, you're better than Spencer Petras because of 2 games. That's it.
They're both really crappy, but I mean, you got to give him an edge somewhere.
Well, onward to the next game, the 2022 Apple Cup between the Washington Huskies and the Washington State Cougars.
A lot of people
Talk
picked
about
an
no
upset.
defense.
A lot of people picked
Sorry,
an
Jeffrey.
upset here. A lot of people picked an upset here. I didn't think so. Cougars, it's tough to win at Washington State, but Washington's offense is built for this game. When Washington's playing a team with a good defense, that's where they struggle. Washington State's defense, they lost in a shootout to Oregon. They've lost in shootouts all season long. Utah was a lower scoring game because Utah's defense actually is legit, and Utah, Cameron Rising was not playing, so that's why that was a low scoring game. But I picked Washington because I felt that Penix was better than Ward. Penix is better than Cameron Ward. So Washington's offense was able to win. And I know a lot of people thought Washington State would pull it off, but I didn't see it, and Washington did prevail. Kind of stink. Washington just fell just short from being in the Pac-12 championship game. It'd been kind of cool to see Washington make it, but they didn't. But they still had a great season, and a lot of people.
Jeffrey, I'm glad you brought that up.
A lot of people.
If they wouldn't have lost, my bad, Jeffrey. I'm jumping ahead.
My last point was just this. A lot of people thought at the beginning of the season that Washington was going to be a 6-7 win team. And I said at the beginning of the season, because obviously experience in Indiana, I said if Michael Penix simulates with Kalen DeBoer again and he's healthy, they can win 9-10 games. And they did it. By golly, they did it.
Turnaround job, Kalen DeBoer. Austin, your thoughts?
If they would, Washington right now, man, they are kicking themselves right now thinking if we wouldn't have lost in the desert to Arizona State, we could be in the thick of this conversation, because that game against Arizona State in the desert, if they would have lost that, they would be a one-loss team right now themselves, and they would be playing USC and possibly clinching for a playoff spot. But as you say, you can't go back in the past. But it was a great win. They got the Apple Cup, and congratulations to the Huskies. And Washington State played better than I thought they would. I know the score doesn't indicate it, but they played better than I thought they would.
Gentlemen,
that's all I'd like to say on that.
Prior to last night, what was the most points scored combined in the history of the Washington State rivalry?
It was like 83 or something. It was like 83 or 82, something like that.
I think it was 86.
No, It was 83 total points
83.
in 1976.
Good
And-
God.
And last night was 84 total points
Mhm.
combined. And
I said
now
83.
yeah, and broke the record. So that's pretty cool. And can I just say kudos to Michael Penix Jr., the passing yards leader in all of college football. Like, wow, you've done an awesome job this year. And I hope if you are draft eligible, somebody gets you.
Yeah, he's a senior, so I think he's actually a 5th-year
Hey,
senior. So he's gone after this year. He can't even return. So
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Hey,
that
I don't
2020
know because
nobody really counts it because of the COVID year. You automatically get a free year.
hey,
Mhm.
but another thing
he
to
might
note
have
real
an
fast,
extra year. I don't know.
Washington clinched 10 wins, boys. They're New Year's Six Bowl bound more than likely. What about it?
Mm-hmm.
depends
awesome.
on if USC makes the playoff or not. Most likely.
Oh, they'll be in New Year's Six Bowl. That's gonna be fun. Yeah, and Washington had more than 700 total yards. Thank you, James. Oh,
Yeah,
and
and he said here his name is James on his YouTube handle there. It's James. Old Celtic Gaelic
Oh.
But
spelling.
hey,
That's
another
pretty
quick
cool.
thing.
oh, like
Just to
Boston.
think,
Celtic.
just to think, Washington last year was atrocious. We can all agree on that. And now they're a 10-win team and a possible
And-
New Year's Six Bowl. That's an incredible turnaround.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, James makes a point. He thinks Michigan's locked in, so he doesn't, think it's probably not gonna happen. But you never know with a Purdue
The only
upset.
way I think it would happen is if Purdue wins like 86-0, and
Mhm.
I don't see them doing it. The defense is decently good enough to
Mhm.
prevent that from happening.
Yes.
As far as this one, congrats to Michael Penix. You're an amazing quarterback. I've always kind of thought you were since Penn State 2020, other than when you play Ohio State.
Beautiful game, man. That was a beautiful game.
That man knows how to play beautiful games. I love that man. Congrats to Washington. I figured you were gonna win. You usually win.
James, talk about audition for Coach of the Year. Exactly, man.
Kalen DeBoer is the reason Indiana was good. Michael Penix was the reason Indiana was good. That's all you can say. When they both left, Indiana fell back to earth, and it's going to continue to be that way until they get another Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix.
The only
Here's
thing,
the thing.
The only thing
Real
else I had
fast.
to,
Oh, go ahead, Buckeye Mike.
the only thing else I have to say on this game is where was the defense? Our sport is supposed to have both sides of the ball being pretty good. Where was the defense? And I know this accounts for most of the games this week, but there was no defense. I liked the high scoring and all the shining lights of the offense, but where was the defense?
They don't got none.
Oh,
That's correct. Well, I kind of touched on it earlier. Washington State's defense has been bad all season. It's not that good. That's why I thought Washington would benefit
Their
from
offense is made up for it.
Washington would benefit from Washington State's poor defense, and it occurred. Washington won because Washington State's defense is so bad. John Jansen asked, will Ohio State make the college football playoff? I've touched on this before
if
earlier.
USC loses.
USC or TCU loses. TCU would have to lose maybe by a little bit, but Alabama obviously we need both to lose and TCU lose by a lot. But Ohio State's path is still very much alive, even though people don't want to think it is. But Ohio State definitely has a very easy chance to make the college football playoff because it's going to be very tough for USC and TCU to both win.
John Jansen,
Which
you may possibly see a similar scenario from Ohio State and Alabama from 2017, but this time Ohio State gets the nod. But, I was going to say most of the games this week is right because it sure wasn't going to be found in the Rose Bowl.
USC's
Ooh.
defense was not too bad. I mean, they they weren't great, but they did enough to stop Notre Dame. So,
And now we go onward to the ACC SEC matchups, starting with Austin's favorite team, the Louisville Cardinals and the Kentucky Wildcats. Austin, your reaction.
Help us all. Kentucky runs the state again. This can't keep happening. I can't take it. But all joking aside, congratulations to all the Kentucky fans out there. The real MVP, congratulations. You earned it. And apparently we have no run defense. Apparently against Kentucky we had no run defense whatsoever. It was awful. And apparently we couldn't do anything on offense either. We just made Kentucky look like a top 25 team. And I don't know what we put out on the field. Our offense and our defense were both bad. The only bright spot is our special teams got a blocked punt, and we scored off that. Other than that, this was not a good game. And I wish we could do it over again, but we can't. And I think we just got a little ahead of ourselves, and it bit us in the butt. Congratulations, Kentucky. That's all I got to say. I'm just disappointed.
I agree with you, Austin. Your point about, when we were picking these games, about how you thought that Louisville would fall short in this game. You thought that Kentucky would show up, Louisville would fall short. And I disagreed. I thought Louisville was going to get it done, but you were right. Louisville played bad. They played really, really bad against Kentucky because Kentucky's been really struggling lately. I thought Louisville would get it done. I hate they didn't for you. I was pulling for Louisville, so we didn't have to hear how Kentucky should make the college football playoff from some people. But again, it is what it is. Louisville didn't get it done, but they just did not play too well.
James Scott says, LOL, Kentucky played this as their Super Bowl. They fell off so bad at the end of the year. Louisville was their chance at redemption. Exactly. And kudos to, Scott Satterfield for a pretty good year at Louisville.
I'm also glad that Matt Rule's going to Nebraska, so the Mark Stoops to Nebraska talk would go away.
Oh, that was all.
I knew that Mark Stoops was not going to Nebraska. Thank you, Matt Rule, for going to Nebraska. Thank you.
Jeffrey, that's another topic for another day, my friend.
Yep.
He just needs to stay at Kentucky.
Mike, what was your take on Louisville, Kentucky?
Well, let me think. Congrats to Kentucky. And didn't really get a chance to watch this game yet, so I don't have too much to say. But just congrats.
Absolutely. And onward to our next SEC-ACC matchup, the one that everyone is definitely going to be talking about, Clemson and South Carolina.
Oh, boy.
And, how exciting that South Carolina, history has been made for their season. First win at Kentucky since 2013. First 4-game win streak since 2013. Along with their first win at Kentucky. First ever win against Texas A&M. First AP poll ranking since 2018. Most passing touchdowns single game against Tennessee. Most points scored by an unranked team against an AP top 5 team ever. First AP top 5 team since 2012. First season with 3+ AP top 15 wins. First season with back-to-back top 10 wins and spoiling playoff hopes. And first win over Clemson since 2013.
You talk about bad quarterback play. DJ Uyunglele, however you say it, was 9 of 28.
DJ
Good grief.
Uyunglele.
It's DJ.
Uyunglele, my bad.
it's DJ Doodoo.
Okay, I was about to say,
Yeah.
I thought I said it right, but yeah, Buck, I was wrong. You're right.
He played awful. We want to call out some quarterbacks in this stream. DJ, what was that Saturday? Like, I get it. Like, you were just hoping your defense would run them over, but dang, are you at least not going to attempt anything?
Like, a big losing streak has ended. And I'll tell you what, how about that Beamer ball from Shane Beamer?
Here's something. First of all, the game was great. Second of all, I've said since the Georgia game last year that DJ's not it. DJ sucks, and he shouldn't be the starter at Clemson. He needs to go be the starter at, like, I don't know, Tulsa or Mountain Union in D3. Third of all, did anybody watch the post-game interview with South Carolina head coach? That was funny, where he shouted out to Jesse Palmer after the game. That was funny.
I was watching Ohio State, Michigan, but oh man, I missed that.
Yeah, because he was like, they asked him about, like, what does it mean or whatever, and he was all like, well, you know, people like Jesse Palmer, I love him, but Jesse Palmer said Clemson just has to win and they're in. They got to win out. And I told my guys that, and I was like, we just got to be the one to beat them, and they can't win. And I was like, that's hilarious.
My thoughts on Clemson, South Carolina is that South Carolina, I picked them because I picked them in the preseason. I didn't really have faith they'd get it done, but they got it done. And I will say that South Carolina has had a great season, but they fell off for a minute there when they lost to Missouri, and then they lost at Florida 38-6. So that's why everybody was off the South Carolina bus, South Carolina train, everybody. I mean, with good reason. I mean, they played awful against Florida. I mean, Spencer Rattler threw for like 140 yards against Florida, but then it turns around and has a masterpiece of a game against Tennessee and a really good game against Clemson. So kudos to Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer's one of my favorite coaches in college football right now because he's like Tom Allen from 2 years ago. I mean, I might have to get a South Carolina hat, man. I mean, they're awesome. I mean, their Gamecock thing that they do, the little and all that, it's lame. The cockpit's lame, but I will say your school's awesome. You're a great coach, Shane Beamer, and I'm glad I picked you to beat Clemson because you did a great job. And Clemson, get a new quarterback.
Yep. And now,
the last thing I have to say on this. Where has this Spencer Rattler been, and who is he? This guy,
he can just be more consistent.
He's gone nuts. Yeah, he's gone nuts the last two games. But if you look at his last year at Oklahoma and the beginning of this year, he sucks. I mean, Clemson has truly shown that, like, we've gone back down to the bottom and we suck. Because we can't even beat a bottom feeder team in the SEC. But Spencer Rattler, you suck. You suck. Where's this been?
I mean, I agree with everything you said, but he played bad 3 weeks ago. Florida, he was horrible against Florida. 38-6 loss. It's just 3 weeks ago. So it's not even the beginning of the season. 3 weeks ago. Losing
That's what I'm
at
saying.
Florida. So it was just 3 weeks ago. Then the last 2 weeks against top 10 opponents. I don't know if it's because of the color orange. Maybe he plays better against orange, but he didn't do good against Texas, so I don't know if that matters. Maybe the orange thing isn't legit. I don't know. I mean, he played fantastic. Kudos to Spencer Rattler. I mean, he's going to be back on some people's NFL draft list for the last 2 games. I mean, way too premature, obviously. He needs to play better more often, but yeah. That's
my point. Like, kudos to him for playing better, but why can't you play like this on a consistent basis? What?
Maybe he just enjoys killing people's playoff dreams. Because you think about it, Tennessee, they were a one-loss team when they met South Carolina. Now they're out. Clemson, one loss, still there. Now they're out. Maybe he just enjoys stomping on dreams, playoff dreams.
I just don't get it. I mean, I understand it's harder to, like, as an example, it's harder to get yourself up for Arkansas State, Ohio State, than it is like Clemson and Tennessee. But you still have to consistently play at the same level every time. And that is my critique and downfall with Spencer Rattler and why I just don't like him. He's not consistent. At least CJ Stroud, and I'm not trying to loop everything all together, but CJ Stroud is more consistent because we know what he can do. With Spencer Rattler, it's like, oh, I'm just going to play average to crappy this whole time, and then, oh, we're playing a top 10 or
Buckeye
top
Mike,
25.
don't you worry. We'll have plenty of time to talk about CJ Stroud at the end, buddy. We'll have plenty of
Look
time.
at this comment, though. You think a bad beat of Clemson and Tennessee going down. Stoops signed an extension with Kentucky a day before they lost to Vanderbilt. So, again, that's a bad beat. That's even worse than Tennessee and South Carolina losing, or Tennessee and Clemson losing to South Carolina. That is awful. I mean, that is fun. I mean, look at this. I mean, think about it. Sign a contract extension, 2031, $8.6 million a year, a day before you lose to Vanderbilt. So, again, that is funny right there. That's a bad beat. That's way worse than going down to South Carolina. So, our next game, you got Georgia Tech, Georgia. Again, I've renamed the rivalry instead of good old fashioned hate. It's or whatever it is called.
Plain old fashioned hate.
Clean old fashioned hate. I mean, it's
Is there anything?
It's literally good old fashioned, clean old fashioned, clean old whatever. It's Georgia hating all over Georgia Tech. It is just
Plain
ugly.
old fashioned.
Is there anything worth mentioning in this rivalry, guys? Georgia's rolling.
Georgia playoff berth. No ifs, ands, or buts.
The one thing I will say about this game, and I know it's like a minor point, but Georgia Tech early in the game did have the lead on Georgia, which it dissipated almost immediately, but that is a small note. I mean, that's the only thing of noteworthy that came out of this game, because then they got the lead and Georgia was like, no, hold my chocolate milk. I'm about to throw 56 up on you.
Yeah.
What else is there to say about this game?
This game, Georgia Tech's not a good team. They can beat North Carolina because North Carolina, you just
not a good team.
Fell apart. But again, Georgia, you would say, oh, are they going to overlook? No, they're not going to overlook Georgia Tech. They rolled. Georgia's had moments. I mean, Missouri, the Kent State game. Georgia's had even the Kentucky game.
Clean old fashioned cleat tracks are left across the yellow jacket forehead. Yep.
That's awesome. But Georgia's having their moments against Kentucky, against Missouri, against Kent State, where they haven't played well. So you thought maybe they'd have that type of performance against Georgia Tech, but they did not. They rolled. So kudos to Kirby Smart for not looking ahead to the Mighty Tigers in the SEC championship game.
Real quick, if there was a matchup between the current Georgia Tech and the current Northwestern, who would you guys take? I would take Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
What? They beat North Carolina, man. I mean, Northwestern couldn't even beat Southern Illinois or whatever.
That's the barn.
Georgia Tech's way better.
Or maybe Nebraska's a better comparison.
A better question would be, would you take Colorado or Northwestern? Who would you take there?
I love you, but Colorado.
Oh, who knows, man? But
I guess a better
next game, Jeff.
Kansas State.
This is another one. Kansas State.
That was a good one.
The Sunflower Showdown.
Kansas State just took care of business. There's not much to this one either. I mean, they did what they were supposed to, and now they get to play TCU for the Big 12 championship.
Well, that, and there's also Kansas. And may we just say congratulations to Lance Leopold on a great, beautiful year.
Yes.
I mean, you go
after winning only one game last year and now 6-6 and bowl eligible. Congratulations. Lance Leopold may be a finalist for Coach of the Year. Maybe.
Well, I'd very well consider it for him.
I will say about that point, though, that I think an understated aspect is that people, again, I said this on one of our live streams a couple weeks ago. Kansas had a great season. Yes. I mean, they Lance Leopold, what he's done, turning them around is unbelievable. But they really faltered down the stretch. They went from 5-0 to 1-6 the rest of the way. Kansas was overrated for what people started to prop them up with. Kind of like Syracuse. Syracuse, same thing. When they were undefeated, and then they just started to crumble. Kansas crumbled. They completely fell apart. I picked them several times in the second half of the season. The spreads reflected the same thing. People thought Kansas was going to be competitive. Texas blew the doors off of them. Kansas is not very good. Kansas, kudos to you, Lance Leopold. You've done a great job, but they're not that good either. So I hope he's able to make them even better next year, because I would love to see Kansas football be really good, but they're not very solid, man. That's all I can say about that. Kansas State handled business. If you play like you have the last few weeks, you will beat TCU if TCU doesn't give it 110%. But again, I really hope Kansas is an improved football team in the future. But they have done a great job, masterful season by Lance Leopold, but they got overhyped at the beginning of the season when they started winning the games.
Yeah, well, especially in that game against TCU. As soon as that injury to Jalen Daniels happened, all went downhill from there.
Which we've seen what TCU has become. We'll get to that in a minute.
Colorado versus Northwestern, the Wildcats in 15th overtime.
Yeah, we could definitely see that. I would actually stay up for that game, to be quite honest with you, James.
That's because there will be no 2-point conversions, man. It'd be like 10 overtimes with no 2-point conversions.
Yeah, I hate those.
Speaking about Lance Leopold, agreed to a 2-year contract extension through 2029. The university included commitment to spend $300 million on a new facility and upgrades in athletics. Hey, that's great for Kansas football, because they're widely considered a basketball school. And now that they're willing to invest in this football team and give him a fair chance, kudos, great.
Maybe we could see Kansas talking about with all programs. They need this. Indiana, Northwestern, Colorado. College sports is about being competitive off the field. The money. Kansas is now investing into the program. This is what you need to win. In the NFL, it's even Steven. That's why it's harder to win at the NFL level, because it's even. So agreed, Austin. It's great Kansas is doing this, but more programs that stink need to do this, because if you don't do this, basically Tom Allen started to go on Indiana for just brief. Tom Allen's begged on a radio show the other day, help me, give me more help, more resources, because if not, he's going to get fired. But what can he do? So I agree, Austin. Kansas is doing the right thing by giving Lance Leopold a contract extension and investing into the program, because that's how you win in college football.
But the unfortunate result of last night's game is Kansas State is now on a 14-game winning streak against the Kansas Jayhawks. 14-game winning streak. Yeah. John Jansen says, I'm a Missouri fan. I think Mizzou could have done a lot better than a sits. Great loss versus Georgia, but we lost Auburn OT. Yes, you did, my friend. Yes, you did. In the Aaron Judge game.
Well, yeah, that fumble at the goal line, man. I watched that ending, dude. It was like
1
inch from the goal line.
I will say, do you have an opinion on Missouri? Me personally, I think Missouri, they're a good team in the SEC. I think they're just that team there to spoil some hopes.
They almost beat
I do suspect Eli Drinkwitz being in the hot seat going in 2023 because of they're going to get tired of those 6-win seasons eventually. But also, if you check out on Twitter, on the Liberty Bowl's Twitter, on the tweets and replies, you may see that they may get the Kansas-Missouri game coming back.
Missouri also got blown out by K-State and Tennessee. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
They're just a little inconsistent.
So
they're just a little They're just a little inconsistent, though. Look at South Carolina. You lost to Florida 38-6. Spencer Rattler looks like hot trash. You go around, beat Tennessee Clemson. So Missouri, you almost beat Georgia. Yes, Missouri is good. They are a good team. If they were in another conference, they'd be even better than 6-6. They are a good team.
They almost
They are
beat Kentucky.
inconsistent, but they're a good team. So, and we should have done Arkansas, Missouri. That was like the one honorable mention game I wish we had have done, like of all of them, because that was a good game.
Yeah.
And Arkansas, Missouri, I picked Arkansas on me personally, just in my
John
head.
Jansen,
Great
I
game.
think of Kansas as Mizzou's main rival still. Well, like I said, if you look on Liberty Bowl Twitter and you look on their tweets and replies, they may just bring it back sooner than 2025.
Now, if we're referring to football, yes, but basketball, I'm sorry. Kansas is just head and shoulders.
I was talking about football.
Okay.
Yeah, because Liberty Bowl in the Liberty Bowl under the tweets and replies, the college football Reddit. Oh yeah.
The last time that the Kansas-Missouri basketball rivalry was good was in 2013. That game was legit. Missouri was like 4th, Kansas was 2nd, and it was the last year before Missouri left for the SEC. That was a great game. That was like 9 years ago.
I think that was February 2012.
12. Again, if I'm getting the years wrong, it don't matter. I remember the game. I was a little kid, man. Great game. Fantastic game.
I believe Missouri could have had a better season and really had a chance at wins versus Kentucky, Florida, and Auburn. They nearly beat Georgia. Are we good enough at the moment? And he commented, Georgia.
That's what I'm saying earlier. I said they almost beat Georgia, so they're solid. You can't almost beat Georgia if you're not at least competent. So Missouri's a good team. They're just very inconsistent because they've been blown out. They've had bad performances like South Carolina has, but they've also played really well too. So again, they're a good team. Just a good team.
On to the next game, gentlemen. I think it's time. What's our next game, young Jeffrey?
Iowa State, TCU. TCU, this is another game that we don't even really have to talk about as much. Iowa State, I said that Matt Campbell, no one wants to admit it, but something's wrong at Iowa State. Something is completely wrong with the Cyclones. I'm not saying he's on the hot seat. He's done a good job at Iowa State. I know what Iowa State was before he got there, but they stink right now really bad. Their offense is bad. Hunter Deckers is almost as bad as Spencer Petras. I mean, he's a little bit better, but he's bad. The defense gave up in this game because they're like the broadcast team kept saying Iowa State's defense has to save them in this game. They've saved them all year. Why are they going to try on a 4-7 game where their offense isn't doing a daggum thing and TCU's just pouring it on? So the Horned Frogs are real simple or whatever they do. They beat down Iowa State. It proves Iowa State is in bad shape. I would argue Matt Campbell needs to watch out. He needs to do better because he rose them up. Now they're in the toilet. And TCU, all you got to do is
win one Jeffrey, I agree.
In the playoff.
Yeah. And
not much to say on this game. TCU just steamrolled them, left no doubt. TCU's ready. They're ready for the Big 12 championship game. They know they win that. They've got a date in the playoffs with somebody. And Iowa State, how the mighty have fallen. They were a team in the New Year's Six Bowl, and now they're this. That's all I got to say.
ECU is ready to answer question versus Matt Campbell's not ready to address the issues game. Agreed.
Yeah. But one good thing came out of Iowa State's bad year this year. They ended that 6-game losing streak to Iowa. So, but a price for everything.
They ended the streak. They ended the streak because of the fact Iowa's offense was so bad early in the season. Like Iowa's gotten a little bit better. That's why they've woken up a bit because they were dead in the beginning of the season. That South Dakota State and Iowa State games was some of the worst offense I've ever seen.
Buckeye Mike, you want to give your quick thoughts on it, or do you think we said it all?
So going back to Kansas State, I have 2 words. Deuce Vaughn. I love that kid.
Oh
With
yeah.
TCU, Iowa State, TCU, congrats. You finally showed you can be dominant. But guess what? It's a problem. It was a 4-win team. So, I mean, did we see this coming? No, but I mean, we should have expected this kind of dominance against this kind of a team. It's a 4-win team. This is something that Ohio State would have done to Iowa State, something Michigan would have done to Iowa State. So, I mean, the score does not surprise me. I love you, Matt Campbell, but as Jeffrey said, and I think Austin said, there are things to fix. Give this man a chance to fix it. Don't just boot him out the door just because of this year. They're 2 years removed from a New Year's Six game. He deserves a chance to fix the problems. Whatever the problems are, fix the problems.
Yeah. I don't think Iowa State will do that. They're not that kind of program. I mean,
But
Matt
nonetheless,
literally their best coach ever.
Right. I don't think they
But
will.
nonetheless.
I'm just saying we're in a cycle right now where you could be the best coach ever and then have a down year or two. And if you don't fix it within a year or two of it starting to come down, they're letting them go. The problem with these coaches is they're not having a chance to last very long.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I agree with you, Buck, about Iowa State, with Matt Campbell. Don't fire him. I agree. I'm not saying that. I agree with you 110%. I'm just saying that something is wrong with Iowa State. I mean, I understand that you lose your players, and I know that Iowa State's not Alabama or Ohio State where you replace it. But Hunter Deckers was supposed to be good. Okay, and he's just not there. The run game is dead. Their offense is horrible. Their defense played well until they gave up. I want Iowa State to get better. I want Matt Campbell to fix it because I like the guy, but they are awful right now. They are horrible.
I think they'll go better because the only way to go is up. James Scott says Iowa State just needs to look at what they were before Campbell. I think they have a pretty good idea. I think they're no worries, James. They won't throw the baby out with the bathwater on Matt Campbell. But
nonetheless, on to the next game. Enough time talking about Iowa State.
Tigers and the Texas A&M Aggies. Oh man, that was a big upset.
Boy, does Jimbo Fisher know how to save his job or what, gentlemen?
I don't even think he saved his job yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll just get mine out of the way because it's probably a little bit too long for you guys, but I'll just say about this game again, completely validated my point that Texas A&M is a better football team than Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's bad. They don't have talent. I'm sorry. Clark Lee's a stud, man. The guy can coach, but the team's bad. Vanderbilt's a bad team. Texas A&M is a good team that's played bad this year, and they've had a lot of circumstances, some injuries, some extracurriculars in the locker room, problems all season long. So A&M's a good team because they can beat teams like LSU. Vanderbilt can't do this. They just can't do this. They're not capable. They don't have the talent.
A&M
has talent.
Jeffrey, if I may remind you real fast. Sorry to cut you off, but this is an important point to make. They were one play away from beating Alabama. Let's not forget that.
A&M's capable. That's my whole point. A&M is a capable team. They've dropped the ball. I'm serious. Jimbo Fisher, like you're talking about him saving his job, A&M would be insane to fire this guy. You gave him the contract extension. You're going to fire him $86 million buy. I don't care if you lower it. I don't care if you want to say, oh, let's fire him without cause because of the locker room stuff and all the things that are going on. It doesn't matter. You gave him the contract. You stick it out. If you give this Connor Wigman kid a chance with the talent they got, A&M could be better next year. They were very close to being a 9-3 football team. They lost several games by very, very few points, one-score games. So, yes, A&M is a good football team that played horrible. Jimbo deserves a lot of blame, but they are way better than Vanderbilt because of those recruiting classes. A&M is a good team. They proved it against LSU.
They just get rid of their offensive staff. They'll be good to go.
You think he comes into next year on the hot seat?
Well, they're definitely gonna renegotiate that buyout because you can't tell me they're going to pay out $95 million. James Scott is saying Texas A&M is a sad situation. He's more focused on recruiting stars and developing talent. If they get rid of Jimbo now, it'll cost them $90 million on the buyout, which is why I suspect that they will negotiate that buyout. Kind of like after the COVID season from Michigan. Michigan negotiated the pay with Jim Harbaugh, and they were negotiating his buyout to go down a little bit. Nebraska did the same thing with Scott Frost, but I suspect that A&M is going to do that. They're not going to pay $90 million.
Last thing on this game from me, I think that LSU could have also been caught in the trap of looking ahead, but I don't know. I mean, I would suspect that Brian Kelly would want to win that game, but at the same time, they were guaranteed a spot in the SEC championship game already going in, so it could have
kind of
been like that.
Point about LSU though, my
I was about
argument
ready to say,
is that LSU was never really that good.
Yeah, I was about ready to say, like, we're talking
Arkansas
about
by
A&M and
3.
Jimbo.
They beat Arkansas by 3 with a backup quote 13-10. If KJ Jefferson is playing against LSU,
Arkansas wins that game.
So I almost picked A&M for this reason because everybody's like, A&M's trash, A&M's garbage. No, they're not. They are a trashy program, but they got great players. They can beat anybody in the country. They could beat Georgia if they gave their A game. They could because they have the talent to do so. It's the coaching, it's the program, it's the environment that's the problem. LSU's a good football team, but they had a perfect game against Alabama and 1-1. They've played bad a lot of games this season. They've had awful games that they've squeaked by. So that's why your point, Buck, on Mike, before we went live, you said LSU had no shot against Georgia. They had a shot against Georgia if Georgia played bad, but Georgia's more likely not going to play bad. LSU is not on Alabama or Georgia's level yet, even though LSU beat Alabama. They're not on their level yet.
Yeah.
Right. I just meant
Daniels is not elite either.
No. I just meant that like they were already a lock for the championship game. So maybe they just weren't focused in on A&M like it should have been. They were focused on Georgia, and that blindsidedness and not being prepared for A&M is amongst other things, but it's what led to the result that we have, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think there was some look ahead. Granted, to your point, you're right. And I think it's they not have the right players, so to speak. Like Jaden Daniels is pretty good. He's not, like you said, he's not elite, but he's decent enough quarterback to get you the win and that you need and put your team on his back.
Well, I'm pulling this comment up right here about James Scott saying Iowa State is wrong personnel. You just said that about A&M. Wrong players. You can say it, or LSU, wrong players. That's the thing. I said A&M, but it's LSU. Wrong players. If you have the wrong players on your team, then you're not able to win. LSU is a really good team, and Brian Kelly's did a great job, but they're not on that level yet. They're just not.
Yeah. Just to wrap up on this game, because great job to A&M. I mean, they came in, they wanted this more. They wanted to send their guys out right. And LSU, Brian Kelly, he did it again. Yep. Just when you think he's finally going to put the big game curse behind him, they bit him in the butt again. Here's another big game for them because they win this, and then they get Georgia and they win that, and then there's a slight chance they could sneak into the playoffs. But nope, they decided to blow it against A&M.
So before you go, Jeffrey, let me correct my point. My point was A&M had nothing to play for, just to win the game. LSU still, to a degree, had everything in front of them. All they had to do was win and go play Georgia and win. Texas A&M has nothing left to play for. This was it, guys. So it doesn't surprise me that this happened in a way, because they just laid everything out on the floor and was like, you know what? Let's go Rocky Balboa and the Russian guy back and forth and just butt heads all night. And guess what?
I agree with this comment.
It got to a point that A&M was like, here's a right hook, and LSU just laid flat on the mat and couldn't get back up and respond. And it was over.
I agree with this comment. That blindness made it so we no longer have to hear LSU is a potential playoff team.
Woo!
I mean, they did beat Alabama. This is true, but they're still a 3-loss team. I don't care if they win the SEC or not. I know people say you win your conference, you automatically should be in. No. If you're a 3-loss team or a 4-loss team, no.
There's cutoff.
And that would be the case if Purdue wins. Does that mean Purdue gets in? Not to take us down a rabbit hole, but
no, because if you're a 3 or more loss team as a conference champion, then it comes down to comparing resumes, and that's where you being a 3 or more loss conference champion makes you fall apart. Yes, you have the one big point that puts you in front of people or other teams, but your resume doesn't stack up the same way as a 0 loss, a 1 loss, and a 2-loss comparison. It may, if you're in the if it's an SEC comparison, it may for a 3-loss team, but that's a stretch.
Oh, and speaking of a team that beat Bam, you're gonna say something?
I'm sorry, I've been waiting for a few minutes. I run my mouth a lot. I'm sorry, but my point is you got to think again. I've compared A&M to Vanderbilt a lot, but Tennessee, if LSU plays at Vanderbilt, there's no look ahead. LSU wins because Tennessee goes into a lackluster environment. Vanderbilt Stadium is bad. The music on the TV was louder than the fans. Okay, you could barely hear anything. It was like, yeah, let's live in on a prayer. Like you can hear the music, but you're not hearing the fans. LSU going into 100,000 people it's not the same thing. There is a difference. A&M is here. They've had this season. Vanderbilt is here always. They're bad. A&M
just get lucky.
Capable of these games any day of the week.
They're
capable of this all the time.
I agree with this comment
because A&M is capable of this. Vanderbilt's not.
True.
That's it.
I agree with this comment. In the 12-team model, Purdue would get in as the Big Ten champion. That's fair enough.
Here's the thing. Purdue would get in, but they would be the lowest seeded conference champion in that case.
Yes. But if you're basing it off if you win your conference, then Purdue would be in.
But this is why you need to get rid of divisions so the 2 best teams get in, because Purdue never deserves to be in this scenario. They don't deserve it. Ohio State, Michigan, even if it's a rematch, play them again because one of those 2 teams deserves to be the champ. It does not no Purdue. No Purdue. A 4-loss team does not deserve to be the lowest seed. That's not even justifiable. Purdue's not even a top 25 team. They don't deserve it even if they somehow beat Michigan. So change the rules.
And speaking of a team that beat Bama, the Tennessee Volunteers against the Vanderbilt Commodores.
And Mark Rogers makes a great point. Thank you, Mark. The Big Ten's getting rid of divisions, so this is not going to matter. Thank you, Mark. You're a legend,
Mark.
man.
What up, Mark? Guys are awesome. Keep it up. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Yes, but the lowest seed champion would still be 4 as one of the best 4 conferences. That is a interesting point because if you're basing it on the criteria of, okay, the 4 conference champions, say USC 1, saying it's the Pac-12, USC 1, Georgia 2, and then say Purdue 3 or 4. If that's how you're basing it off of, because they are one of the 4 best.
Well, the thing is, in a 12-team playoff, they would be the 5 seed or somewhere, because you have 6 conference champions that would qualify, because you still have to give the A seed to the group of 5 best champion. So you're probably looking at like, and it's just a scenario, and I'm just going to say this real quick. You're probably looking at like a Purdue as a Big Ten champion against probably Tulane as the AAC champion in the 12 seed, moving on to face either could be Ohio State, USC, or TCU in that 4 seed. And if you ask me, as Mark would say in that case, that is probably going to be the worst region if that would ever come to fruition. That would be the worst
Here's
region
to
because
clarify
that
his
4
point.
seed would come out of it.
To clarify James's point, the best four conference champions are going to be seeded the top 4 based on the proposed model. Okay, that does make some significance. Do you agree or no?
Oh,
So let's just say, for instance, Purdue is a 4-loss team, and we're doing it in a 12-team playoff model. Where would y'all have them if they won the Big Ten, for instance?
As low as possible.
I wish I could not put them in at all because,
Yeah,
again, get rid of the division so this will never happen.
They would have to be the 5 seed at best. You could potentially slide them down to the 8 seed, 7 seed, but I would say the 5 seed as a conference champion. And that's why I was talking about 5 and then give the group of 5 as the 12 seed, and then they would play the 4 seed, which right now looks like it would be USC. So you give Purdue and Tulane a good extra game just to then move on and get slaughtered by the 4 seed.
oh yeah. But yeah, about the Tennessee
James's point, if the 12-team model where now Purdue would be in
Yes.
as the Big Ten champion.
If they would win the Big Ten championship game, yes.
Which is why I'm glad this is irrelevant. Thank you for this not mattering at all, because there is no such thing as 12-team playoff until the divisions are gone. And then Purdue would have to be actually 11-1 or whatever to do it. So awesome. That's like the greatest gift I can get for Christmas, and it's not even December yet. No Purdue. No comprendo.
I'm sorry I
Not
took
yet,
y'all
not
down a
yet
rabbit
again.
hole. My apologies.
It's okay.
I
It's
just
all right.
enjoy
I mean,
this stuff.
10 minutes, but it's all good.
And here we go. The Tennessee Vanderbilt game, takeaways on that.
Tennessee looked like they were
I
finally
would-
back in form. And
I would like to
it looks
say,
like
Mr. Buckeye Mike, real fast. Joe Milton played pretty good, did he not?
Yeah.
We got to pump the brakes here on Joe Milton and Tennessee. And
I was getting to
No,
that.
I'm just saying Buckeye was a
getting to
doubter,
that.
though.
played bad.
He called him
Vanderbilt
trash.
played bad.
I was getting to that. Tennessee looks like they're back in regular form. They haven't missed a beat. That being said, it's still Joe Milton, and it's still Vanderbilt, guys. It's still Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt somehow still Vanderbilted and got shut out by Tennessee. I mean, there's not much to say on this game because this game went exactly how we thought it would go.
Except
Connor
Will.
Johnson makes a quick comment. He said, "Hey, Austin, looks like we might be hypothetically seeing you in the Sun Bowl. It'd be a great matchup." I agree, man. Your defense and our defense versus each other's offense. I look forward to it, my guy. I hope we do meet. I think you guys win 27-21 possibly.
I know that's a Bama hat, but were you rocking with the Braves the other? Well, yes, I was. Thank you for noticing.
The Atlanta Braves logo is so similar to Alabama's, it's unbelievable. Like sometimes I can't even tell the difference. I'm like, is that Alabama? Oh, that's the Braves. I don't watch baseball that much, but man, it's so close.
Tennessee saw what
Braves my whole life.
Vanderbilt did to a couple of their other schools, and really we're not going to get embarrassed a second time. Ooh,
I'm just
shots
glad
fired.
Tennessee did this, so it will prove that Vanderbilt is worse than Texas A&M. I'm just glad this happened. Thank you. Just thank you, Tennessee.
Yeah.
I knew this all along. I was just, if I came across not thinking it. I was just messing with you.
Yeah. Well,
Vandy's just overall not that good.
proved us right. You proved yourself right against us, man.
I didn't even want to be right. I want Vanderbilt to be good. I just knew it. I never will
Any
pick
other
with my
thoughts on this
heart.
game?
If I picked with my heart, I'd pick Indiana to beat Ohio State. All right, I'm not doing it. I'm not gonna do that.
Don't ever do that. That's not smart.
I'm not doing it. I will pick Buckeye Mike's team. And for it's almost like I'm like an honorary Ohio State fan. I'm like, just Ohio State, just beat Indiana nicely. Don't knock out our quarterback. It's good. Good job, Ohio State. I like Brutus. Brutus is the best mascot beside maybe the Oregon Duck, but they're both awesome.
Well,
awesome.
Jeffrey, what is our next game?
Our next
The
game.
Iron Bowl. Booyah.
we're almost done.
Jackson,
already.
since you were the guy who knows a lot about this, kick us off, my friend. What'd you think?
Oh, it was pretty big. I was close on that final score between the Alabama and the Auburn. But I tell you what, though, if this is Bryce Young's final game, may I just say, it's been awesome watching you play at Alabama. Because, I mean, thank you for giving us the awesome memories. And to Williamson, thank you for bringing your awesomeness to the Alabama Crimson Tide. And as for Cadillac Williams, I know you want to be at Auburn badly, but you're gonna be a great head coach one of these days. Here's what you need to do. Go work for Coach Saban or Kirby Smart. And wait there as long as you have to for Auburn to open up next time.
Basically, like Jackson's pointing out, if you want to be a head coach, just go work for Kirby Smart or Nick Saban. Like that's all you gotta do. So even if you're the video coordinator, you're still good because you're working for them.
Yeah, don't just take any old position at Auburn to be at Auburn. Okay. You gotta like stay with Coach Saban or Kirby as long as possible.
My thoughts on this game, I guess, is like probably I'm the second most knowledgeable here about Alabama because I'm an honorary Alabama fan. I got the whatever you call these hats. I don't know what you call them.
The bucket hat.
Jeffrey, you look ugly in that hat. Get it off.
The bucket hats. I mean, dude, I'm the same guy. Is it better with these or the hat? So am I like triple, double bad now? Like what's going on here?
You're good, Jeffrey. It's just a hat.
But legit, though,
we love you anyway, Jeffrey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, thanks, man. Me and my dad watched this game and a little bit of it anyway. We're putting up some Christmas lights. We saw like the second half, but Alabama. I mean, my thing is, I just want, irrational Alabama fans, the ones that are mad that they're more than likely not going to make the playoffs. It's still possible, but more than likely not going to make the playoffs, to just appreciate Bryce Young. Because if it wasn't for Bryce Young and the Houdini, as Brad Nessler, pointed out a million times on CBS, the Houdini that he is, Alabama could be 7-5 this year.
Oh, true.
Because Bryce Young is a legend. The guy can make plays out of nothing. I mean, the offensive line is just the worst Alabama offensive line I think I've ever seen. And Bryce Young, when he was about to get sacked, he would make plays out of nothing. So I just love watching Bryce Young play football. The guy is awesome. If he stays healthy, he will be a great pro. And that's about all I have to say. In Auburn, I respect Auburn this year, for what they did, not folding completely. And they played some competent football down the stretch. I think Cadillac Williams, I would pick Cadillac Williams over Hugh Freeze just because of if they hire Hugh Freeze, I've already been through it in my coaching video. I just don't think it would be smart to hire a guy with scandals and then potentially fire him without cause because of those scandals, even though you already knew about the scandals. I just think that would be wrong. So I would prefer Cadillac Williams over Hugh Freeze. But that's all I have to say about it. But Alabama, Bryce Young is awesome. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Hey, big shout out to Joey Foster on that big win Saturday. West Virginia beat Oklahoma State.
Big win.
Good old
deserve a
country
bowl game.
road.
They deserve a bowl game for that performance.
Mountain Mama.
And I like Connor Johnson's point. Bryce Young and Caleb Williams will be interesting to see who has a better pro career. I do too, but that'll be interesting. But as far
My
as it
answer to
concerns
that,
Alabama,
sorry,
Auburn,
Austin, can I say this real quick about that point? And Bryce Young and Caleb Williams, whoever has a better career is the one that gets injured the least because both run. Whoever gets injured the least.
I think it's going to be Bryce Young that has the better pro career for right now. Because I mean,
gentlemen, we better watch out. West Virginia's back, baby. They're going to
Oh.
win it all next year. Count it.
And Connor Johnson is going to love this Nets game. Oh, man. This Nets game. The Oregon Donald Ducks and the Oregon State Beavers in the Gravity Falls Bowl.
Shout out to the Beavers.
And
That comeback.
And the best part is they did it with 0 passes. They only had, I believe it was 6 passes or something.
They didn't pass the ball at all for the last quarter and a half.
Yeah, I mean, that is so
carries.
Let's see. Who's on the on here somewhere.
So,
but yeah, that was pretty big. Not only did West Virginia beat the Cowboys, they did something rare. They did it on the road. Fantastic way to go out. Bryce will be the better pro. Caleb plays hero ball every down, which is cool in college, but won't work in the league. He will need to alter his play style to succeed. Yep.
I agree with that point 100%, but that kind of plays in what I was saying about the injury factor because a lot of the hero plays is on the run. Because, I mean, you look at, like, I'm afraid, like, Josh Allen. I'm not getting off a rabbit hole, but Josh Allen, he takes a lot of hits. How long is he going to make it? Patrick Mahomes tries to take fewer hits. When he runs, he'll last longer. If Bryce Young or Caleb Williams get demolished in the league, they're done. I mean, they're going to have to not run as much. But I do agree with the hero ball by Caleb Williams. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Connor Johnson makes a good point. Our O-line coach is underrated. Bunch of low to mid 3 stars. He runs a zone scheme and develops at an elite level. Yes, Oregon State, they are a very sneaky good team. Not a lot of people give them credit. Like, they took USC to the limit. And to come back from.
But how about that botched punt by Oregon? Was that not a turning point for Oregon State or what, man? I mean, that was wow.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts on this game is that I picked Oregon State and I was feeling a little disconcerted when Oregon was up 31-10. So, yeah, I mean, Oregon State, kudos for fighting back. Things broke your way. But, again, Oregon State is a very, very good team this year. And I'm glad that Oregon State's playing well. And Oregon, they've slipped a bit at the end of the season. Obviously, they weren't bad losses, but, they went from being like we talk about how Tennessee blew it and Clemson blew it. Oregon blew it, too. They could have made the playoff as well. They dropped the Washington game, and then they lose to Oregon State. So, Oregon State, fantastic team this year. And, again, as Connor points out, they don't have a lot of talent on that team. And that's how you know you're a great coach, when you can win with less talent. That is amazing.
I'm going to go as far as that Jonathan Smith is a way better coach than Mike Riley.
Hey, Connor brings it up right here, guys, when he says the team never gave up that culture Smith built. Hey, I think that's one of the biggest things some of these programs are missing or need is culture. Like, people want to see all these 5-star talents like what USC, Bama, and Georgia have, but people don't realize they have a culture there. And that's what a lot of these other teams are starting to build. TCU, they're getting a culture now with Sonny Dykes. And Oklahoma, when Lincoln Riley was there, they had a culture. LSU, they're getting their culture back. Brian Kelly at LSU. I mean, LSU, and then Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame bringing it back. The list goes on, but culture is the key.
I don't disagree with your point about culture. You are 110% correct. But about Sonny Dykes, though, the culture was there with Gary Patterson. He just lost it at the end. It was always there. He just lost it at the end of his tenure. Sonny Dykes just, with most of the players that were already on that team, just brought it back, and they're having a great season. Kudos to him. But TCU had a culture with Gary Patterson. He just lost it at the end of his tenure.
Well, I'll tell you this, Connor Johnson. If you ever see Oregon State go to the Rose Bowl for the first time since 1964 at any point, it will be because of Jonathan Smith. And, that was with Coach Tommy Prothro. Prothro? Yeah, I think that's the name. And the only time that Oregon State has won a Rose Bowl is 1941 with Lon Steiner. So,
What do you think of this comment? Lanning will take some heat from Eugene media for losing to both rivals. What do y'all think of that?
Agreed. I mean,
What's the other rival?
Washington.
He's going to take more heat for this one.
1942 versus, yeah, that was when the Wallace Wade era. Heck yes, we don't belong in the Big 12. ACC needs to drop it down a notch and invite West Virginia in. But I understand they're scared dominance they would face not only in football but basketball. Well, I mean, they got that pretty good basketball coach.
Basketball, West Virginia is no joke, guys.
There's two. If West Virginia would ever leave the Big 12, there's two places they could go. I agree with the ACC, but where's the location of West Virginia, guys?
True.
It's right on the edge of Big Ten country. I'm not saying I want them to go there. I'm just saying if they're ever going to leave the Big 12, there's really realistically two places they could go.
Well, there's that little rivalry with Virginia Tech and a bigger rivalry with Pittsburgh in the basketball.
I mean, yes, it makes more sense unless
it makes more sense to go to the ACC because, I mean, you think about, you're talking about Big Ten, they're right by the ACC too. I mean, it's not, there's no difference. They're literally touching both. They're like, I mean, like you got your east side of your states touching Maryland and Virginia, and then your north touching Pennsylvania and Ohio. So either way you go, you're touching it. You're there.
Oh, and Mike, did you make your point on Oregon State, Oregon?
I haven't said anything on the last two.
Oh.
As far as Oregon State, I am shocked. I think I took the Beavers, but I took the Ducks. I am shocked because I like Oregon. That's why I took them. Dan Lanning deserves to take some heat over this. They were up by 17 points at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And then that punt happened. That botched punt happened. And then just kapoof. They scored 21 unanswered points.
Right.
Now, Alabama Auburn, I only have a few points on this and we can move on real quick. Alabama did what you're supposed to do. They stampeded on Auburn's throat. Here's a good question. So let's just for a second say TCU and USC wins on Friday and Saturday. What would you think about a Sugar Bowl between Alabama and Ohio State?
Ooh.
Do you think if that was a scenario that would be CJ, Bryce, and Will's last game? Do you think a matchup like that would prevent the opt-outs from the ones that are probably going to be the obvious opt-outs?
Alabama's been pretty good at not opting out anyway. They had a few last time, but like a lot of the last time they didn't make the playoff, a lot of their players didn't opt out. Ohio State I would be more worried about because when they played Utah in the Rose Bowl, they opted everybody out that mattered. So I think Ohio State would opt out more than Alabama.
Connor Johnson was saying the Ducks were up by 21 with 5 minutes left in the third. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Connor Johnson, I'd love to come in and preview our bowl against, if it's against Austin Card, especially if y'all have me, of course. I mean, sure. I mean, if we're previewing the bowl game, we'd love to have you as a guest for sure. And then Hummus Hero says, I'm afraid Ron D is losing the culture that Urban left here in Columbus. Interesting point. I don't know. It's too early to tell, man.
I can touch on that, but I want to wait because that's one thing I wanted to talk about.
What are the playoff venues this year from James Scott? They are the Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl.
Yep.
But yeah, that was a pretty big victory by Oregon State, and oh man, I loved it. I was watching Bama and watching a little bit of Oregon State. So what I was doing was just running to TV, watching Bama, and then watching Oregon State on the iPad. And I was wanting to see if Purdue was going to win the Big Ten West on the computer. But yeah, they did.
Troy V makes a great point. West Virginia does not meet the academic requirements of the Big Ten. They have to go to the ACC.
I'm just saying, you could now. Granted, the Big Ten really heavily, if they're bringing members in, they look really heavily at the academic requirements. But if there was one exception to bring a school in and not look at the academic requirements, I think it would be West Virginia. Because if you want to talk about the academic requirements, the obvious one to bring in is Will's favorite team.
Notre Dame.
Hey, let's get ahead by 21 points and be choke artists.
And where did Austin go? Well, bring up some honorable mentions. Texas Tech, Oklahoma. First time in school history that Texas Tech has beaten Texas and Oklahoma in the same year, and that's all in the first year of Joey McGuire. Congratulations to Coach Joey McGuire. And we did touch on Arkansas, Missouri a little bit, right?
Yeah. Missouri's
We didn't
a good team.
pick it, but we roughly touched on it.
And Arizona, snapping that losing streak against Arizona State. That was pretty cool. Wake Forest, Duke. Big victory by Duke. Great turnaround job by Mike Elko. Terrific job. Coastal Carolina. I take it that you really didn't care about James Madison, did you?
No.
They got stumped. You want to talk about an honorable mention that was actually a good game out of the group of 5? I would suggest or would like that we give an honorable mention to Georgia Southern and Appalachian State.
Mm-hmm. Georgia Southern stunning the college football world with a 2 overtime victory.
App
And
State collapsed.
oh yeah, shout out to that
This season.
Sun Belt. I agree, Connor Johnson. I agree. And let's see. Honorable mention to Central Florida and South Florida. Okay, I wonder when the Central Florida fan base is going to get tired of Gus Malzahn at some point. Because at some point, I don't think he's going to win a Big 12 title. Let me just be the first to say. Once Central Florida goes to Big 12, they're not going to win a single title. Because they had this, with Malzahn, they had this habit of winning games that they shouldn't win and losing games they shouldn't. Examples, they beat Tulane this year, and they beat Cincinnati when they shouldn't have. Lost to Louisville when they shouldn't have. And, they lost to Navy. Not a game you should be losing, but you did. East Carolina, you lost to them when you shouldn't have. And you almost lost to South Florida.
Buckeye Mike made a great point, though, about UCF. John Rice Plumlee got hurt, and you got to remember in the Navy game, John Rice Plumlee didn't play. John Rice Plumlee is better than Mikey King. Mikey King can throw, but to me, this is like the Indiana thing. Connor Bazelak, he can throw, but he can't move. Whereas Rice Plumlee can run Same thing with Dexter Williams. John Rice Plumlee adds dimension to UCF's offense because he can throw, he can run, he can do everything. And UCF's a worse team with Mikey Keene in the game. So I don't know how much of that is to blame on Malzahn or how much of it's to blame on Rice Plumlee being out. So I don't know.
I would almost say the whole thing is to blame on Rice Plumlee getting hurt, because when he got hurt, UCF was up 28-0. They were ready to run away with this thing and just blow them out in a shutout. He gets hurt. You bring in the other guy, and it's just a whole different dimension. And it's a closer than I watched college football final this morning to kind of catch up and get a grasp of what I was going to say tonight. And they even were like, this game should not have been this close because it's an Illinois Northwestern situation all over again. USF was 1-10 coming in. They should have been destroyed. They were on the way to being destroyed, and then Plumlee got hurt, and the whole thing all around just fell apart, and they just had enough gusto to hold on at the end and win by a touchdown.
Yeah. Then there were two. We get to two of the biggest games. One of them was the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the USC Trojans. Your reaction to it, Jeffrey?
Yeah, this was a game where, obviously Will, pick Notre Dame because it's his favorite team. And he thought that, when you got the blinded, sunglasses on, that Notre Dame's going to go out to SC and get it done. But I don't know. I just felt that USC, they won, against UCLA. They were ready for Notre Dame. And everybody was talking about the physicality of Notre Dame was going to be enough to stop USC. But USC is good. I mean, they've proven that all season. They have one loss by one at Utah, and Utah is a beast of a team at home. And you can argue that USC should have beaten Utah if there wasn't a bad call at the end of the game. So I will say that I had no doubt USC would win, but the only thing I did doubt was whether USC would play like they can, and they did. Caleb Williams played out of his mind. He did have several Heisman moments. I don't know if he's going to Heisman. That's a whole other debate. That could be a whole other live stream talking about Heisman. But USC played fantastic, and if all they got to do is beat Utah this time, and they're in the playoff, that's all you got to do. USC played great.
But yeah, it was a great game, and I'll tell you what, I bet you they were pretty happy when LSU lost, because now they're going to be number 4. But I personally think they should be number 3 ahead of TCU because that win in Corvallis against Oregon State, man, that was big.
I agree with your point, Connor Johnson, for sure, about the fact that Notre Dame lost to Stanford and Marshall. But I will say that Notre Dame also beat North Carolina, who has slipped a bit. And they beat Clemson, who I know is not as good as they've been in the past. Notre Dame was a competent team. They've improved. They're better than they were against Marshall and Stanford. So that doesn't really apply. It's just USC is better than Notre Dame now. They were way better than Notre Dame then, but they're still better than Notre Dame now. And USC played better than Notre Dame. They did what they needed to do. If USC didn't play well, then Notre Dame could have beaten them, but USC did what they needed to do. They handled business.
Yeah. I mean, that is pretty big, man. All USC has to do. So what you're saying is Pac-12 is greater than AC. Absolutely, that's
if you were here earlier, Connor Johnson, I literally said that. Like the ACC this year is the Pac-12 for the last 4 years before this year. No one wants to say it, but the ACC is horrible.
We'll say it.
They're horrible. They're just bad. The Pac-12 is way better than the ACC this year for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
because the ACC is the only conference that doesn't even have a team in play for the playoff. The Big 12 does, the Pac-12 does, and the SEC and the Big 10 do. The ACC is terrible. They're bad.
And Notre Dame killed the ACC's playoff chances this year. So, and South Carolina, of course.
And the Gamecocks, man.
Oh, yeah, South Carolina.
And the Yellow Jackets, if you want to say North Carolina had a chance.
Oh, yeah.
Technically, Notre Dame beat North Carolina, too, so they ended both. I mean, they ended both.
Oh, yeah. Notre Dame can say that they beat the ACC champ either way. So they'll be having a cold one on Saturday night, and they'll be like, "Oh, I feel pretty good. What did we do? We beat the ACC champ. Oh yeah,
Yeah, we're 8-4, but we basically own the ACC. And if you had to beat North Carolina and Clemson, they'd have been 6-6. But if they had to beat Stanford and Marshall, they'd be 10-2.
Marshall. And one more
So,
game.
hold on. Do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Ooh.
On the game?
No. On Notre Dame USC, or is it just
go
my
ahead.
turn?
Oh yeah, I didn't know whether you gave your opinion or not.
He's been talking the whole time.
I am so sorry.
Told you,
Nothing wrong with it.
Talk a little bit too much,
Nothing
man.
wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. I'm just like we all need to talk.
True. I'm so excited. I'm just like,
I get it. As far as this game, I want to start off by dishing out a few apologies. I'm sorry, Tim, Tony, and Rick, and I'm sorry, Caleb Williams, because at this point, yeah, we can have a live stream later talking about the Heisman. At this point, even if USC does lose the game next week and they lose close, at this point, it's Caleb Williams to lose. If he does lose it, then it's up in the air, but he's the favorite right now. I mean, we can talk about this in the next one, but CJ didn't look Heisman worthy on Saturday. But congrats to USC, got the job done. Notre Dame was hanging in there for a while. I was calling this game. Notre Dame fans need to not blame the quarterback for this game. As Mark tweeted out, the quarterback for Notre Dame played amazing. It's everything else around them. And the thing I don't like with Notre Dame, they're either choke artists, where they get the lead and then choke it away and lose, or they get blown out. And then last thing on this is just in general, Caleb Williams is just a masterful player, and he showed it. I mean, in my opinion, yeah, they're both very elusive. I think Caleb Williams is more elusive and on a bigger scale than Bryce Young. Because I mean, he was in the shotgun, he takes the snap, the pocket is collapsing, he moves up in the pocket, and the pocket gets wide, and he just goes woo, woo, and takes off for 30 yards. He ran like 50, 60 yards to get like a 30-yard run. I mean, who does that other than Johnny, I have a problem with drugs, Manziel?
That's a great point. I would say they're both around equally elusive. Maybe, like you said, Caleb Williams has the potential for the possibility of a greater looking play, but Bryce Young's pretty daggum awesome as well. But on your point about Drew Pine, like some Notre Dame fans were saying that Drew Pine was like almost as bad as Spencer Petras earlier in the season. And I'm just like, whoa, dude, do you know what you're comparing Drew Pine? You're pretty solid quarterback to. You're comparing him to one of the worst quarterbacks of all time. So Notre Dame fans, I don't think you're as irrational as like some Alabama fans that are insane, but I will say that Drew Pine is, like Buckeye Mike said, is not the reason Notre Dame has had problems this year. It's not his fault. He could be better at times, yes, but he's not the problem. Like some teams, there's a problem. It's not Drew Pine.
James.
I will say this real quick, that Spencer Petras, yeah, I am hard on him, but it's because Spencer Petras is in his own special class of bad. Like, like you said, like probably the worst quarterback in the FBS, and that's bad.
I don't know. I'd have to find somebody for like UMass or something. Like who's UMass's quarterback? You know, maybe they're worse. I don't know, but yeah, Petrus is pretty bad.
Go ahead, Jackson.
Let's see. The problem for the Pack is the abandonment by USC, UCLA, the two major money brands. By money brands leaving is going to pull the Pacific competitive down some, by James Scott. And Connor Johnson replies, true, but I think there's enough left as a football brand. I would point to the coaches as my best evidence. Worst possibility, we add San Diego State and SMU. I would add Boise State personally.
Yeah, I would add Boise. But I mean, that's a cop out. That is a bad cop out. If you're reliant on USC and UCLA as the money makers, that's on you. And why? Because you can't get the recruits, because you can't win because you can't get the recruits. You need to build around what you have to bring in the money that you can. Yeah, it helps to have big money programs like USC and UCLA. Ask the Big Ten with Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, you can make the conference survive with the teams you have and bring in your top tier group of 5 teams. Look at the Big 12. They are losing Texas and Oklahoma. What did they do? They grabbed from the top tier of the independent with BYU, and 3 of the top teams in the American were Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. Now, granted, yes, going back to what one of you said, UCF more than likely will never win a Big 12 title unless some culture changes are made and things start to turn around back to the Scott Frost era.
Mm-hmm.
But it will if they do, it will take a long time.
I will say I agree with the point. There is going to be a big drop off in the Pac-12, but see, that's the point like I made the other night about if you could go back to 1990s football and all the conferences are competitive, the Big East is back. You know what I'm saying? That would be the greatest for this. Like you would have this playoff and it would be so even Steven because you'd have good teams from every league and you would not have this problem where the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are so much worse. And the ACC is just playing awful right now. Mm-hmm. And it's the Big 10 SEC running everything. It would be a lot more even.
Speaking of the Big 10, the best for last.
The game.
The game between the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Michigan Wolverines.
You can't trademark the Ohio State. You can trademark the game. I agree with that. You can trademark the game, but not the Ohio State.
It's not technically trademarked. It's only trademarked to sell merchandise.
I know. I'm just poking fun, man.
I know.
One Scoop John, do you know did you know, One Scoop John, that
come on, man.
that down November 18th, 2000, you know what it was 5 days before? That when Michigan beat Ohio State for a second straight year that time? It was 5 days before Tom Brady made his NFL debut. That was the last time Michigan beat Ohio State in consecutive years at that time. And this year was the first time since 2000 that the Ohio State Buckeyes have been beat by Michigan in Columbus. So
we have to see that score for 363 more days.
I mean, how about that?
Sorry, hummus, man.
How about that yeet from zero, man? I mean, that was a big play. It was going to be touchdown Buckeyes. Yeet!
Yeah.
Buckeye like first, Buckeye Mike, if you want.
Plays like that replay in my head over and over again. The ones that stand out, yes, the 2 Edwards breakaway 75-yarders were bad, but it's that one and the stupid, idiotic move by CJ at the end of the game where he's trying to just gain the yards, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, somebody open. Whoop! No, what are you doing? You're driving down to cut it down to one score, and you just give the ball away. What are you doing, CJ? Now, as a whole, for this game, there's a tale of two halves. Because at the end of the first half, and it seemed to flow over to Ohio State in the second half, in my opinion. The end of the first half, Michigan had bad clock management because with the time running down from 50 seconds to 20 seconds or a little less, they went into a huddle after they came out of a timeout. Why would you do that? Obviously, because you won the game, it worked to your advantage. But that in itself makes no sense. CJ, until about the last few drives, showed potential of his run game. It blows my mind how much of not a runner he is. And this is referencing something that one of the commenters said in one of Mark's shows. CJ Stroud is not a statue. He's not a statue because, yes, he does tend to stay in the pocket, but he has the run game if he wants to. It blows mine and Mark's mind because, like we said last night with Mike, the whole front of the line could open and part like the Red Sea, and he's not going to take off. You take off in a moment like that because there have been footage showing that, and he just doesn't go and take off. I mean, it's frustrating. It makes me pop a vein, honestly. The tide started to turn after halftime because Michigan started to win one of the most important key battles. They were winning both sides of the battle of the trenches. They were winning with the offensive line because they started to get separation to have more of a run game. And they were starting to win on the defensive side because they were getting to the quarterback because CJ wants to stay in the pocket and he needs to, like I've said before, when the pocket collapses, you need to leave the pocket, whether you roll out to get somebody open or take off. He just stands there and holds the ball way too long and waits for the receiver to get open. What are you going to do if the receiver never gets open? This is the first time in 1,000 catches that Marvin Harrison finally dropped a pass. Woo freaking who. Good job, Michigan.
The team never really developed on offense like they should have. By they did. I had some questions about that offense when I saw them against Northwestern. So it was like,
me too.
Hummus here said not to make excuses, but our team is based on offensive dominance, and we haven't had a healthy running back or two. One of the best two receivers on the basically all year. You were saying Buckeye Mike.
How about a shout out to Trainum? He just popped up out of the blue, and he was destroying Michigan's defense in the running game. The Michigan defense, like I said, showed up. There was way too many penalties on both sides. I think there was one in that game as well that they shouldn't have had as a penalty. And then arm tackling. This is the thing that irritates me the most. I don't care if you're Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, Oregon. I don't care who you are. Guys, we cannot bring somebody down if we're just reaching for their legs, trying to just bring them down.
Exactly. Troy V said, our secondary sucked all year. The Buckeyes were stopping the run and made JJ beat us in the air. Kudos to JJ for stepping up. He took advantage of the lousy secondary, and they won. James Scott, all I saw most season were Buckeye fans coming into every stream chat saying who's going to stop our offense. We're going to win it all. We've got the best offense in the country. One Scoop John says JJ McGothie. Jeffrey, I don't know if you gave your thoughts on Ohio State, Michigan, but if you
Of course
haven't,
not. I'm letting Buckeye Mike have it all, man. I'm not going
I'm
to interrupt
sorry.
him on
I'm
his
sorry.
game
I
day.
got like 2 things left. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So
I want
go
you to
ahead
get
with the
everything
two
out of the
things.
way. Go ahead.
Exactly,
good.
man.
so our secondary, it was bad play. My big key to that, because I called the game on the channel. The big key with the secondary to me was in the second half. It was 3rd and 1. They are lined up. They take Michigan runs a run play, and all of a sudden transform it into a Tebow jump pass, and the dude is wide open for 6 yards. Yes, crash the box to prepare for the run, but you got to have people back in case of something like this being a fake pass. And last thing, and this thing irritated me the most because Twitter and Instagram and probably Facebook and all the social media has already blown up. Ohio State fans, and I'm talking to the crazy, crazy, crazy Ohio State fans, the ones that are like, oh, we won the Natty. Somebody get the nearest house so we can light that sucker on fire. I'm talking to you guys. Ryan Day, as a head coach, is 44-5, and that's a pretty dang good record. So I want this conversations of fire Ryan Day and put his head on a spike. I want it all to stop. The man knows how to coach. Does he have problems changing the schemes and being too dedicated to his play call from the first half and not make the halftime changes? Yes. And he can fix that, and it's on himself to fix it. There's nothing wrong with Jim Knowles. This was Jim Knowles' first year, and that defense had already looked impressive compared to last year. So there's been improvement. Leave the coaching staff as is and give them time to develop the people they have, because we look pretty good across the board. I'm interested already with 363 days to go. I'm interested to see how 2023 in November goes between Ohio State, Michigan, and Ann Arbor. It's going to be interesting. Now, I give all, as my closing statement, I give all props to Michigan. You won the game. You deserve it. I appreciate the back and forth with you guys. I'm taking it like a man. I'm sitting here, I'm eating my crow, and I'm just laying it all out. Congrats to Michigan. I hope you win the Big Ten, which I don't see why you wouldn't. It would make you look bad if you guys didn't win the Big Ten. So congrats. It was a great season. This season was great for Ohio State. It's 11 wins. There are programs out there that have never even touched 11 wins in a season, let alone 10 wins. If you want to talk about last year, there are many, 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 many programs out there that would love to have the seasons Ohio State has. Why it's all crazy is because of the expectation that Woody Hayes started with, and it stayed up there because outside of John Cooper and Earl Bruce, Ohio State consistently wins 9 to 12 to 13 games a year. So congrats to everybody. Let's have some fun with it, but don't take the Michigan fans too literal when it gets too crazy.
We're all asked a question as the Young Guns by Connor Johnson. Just for fun, Michigan at UCLA, who wins? Oh, wait, that was supposed to happen.
If I would answer that, I would say UCLA, because DTR is such a big threat. And on top of that, Zach Charbonnet would probably come into that game motivated because he came to UCLA from Michigan because the running back room was too stacked, and he would probably look at it like, you guys gave up on me, so I'm going to dish this out to you and give you this L and show you what you missed out on.
Yeah. Oh, One Scoop John makes a great point. Winning by 22 points at Columbus, largest margin since 1976. Jeffrey, your take on the Ohio State, the Michigan?
Well, the first thing I got to answer Connor Johnson's question about Michigan UCLA, because you asked all of us. I would pick Michigan if it wasn't after a big game, because of the fact UCLA is inconsistent. I know the Zach Charbonnet thing, but Michigan fans would fill the stadium halfway because UCLA fans don't show up. So I would pick Michigan. But on the game, I'm so glad Buckeye Mike deserved to get this off his chest. That's why I stayed silent. Allow the man to breathe, Michigan fans. Great win. It was a fantastic win, but Buckeye Mike deserved this rant. We should have given him longer to rant. It would have been completely fine by me. But on the game, doesn't matter. It's just the game. Ohio State, I will say, CJ Stroud, we talked about this before, sometimes just does not appear. And this is my problem, which is why I think he might not succeed in the league, in the NFL. Does not give 100%. I don't see it from the guy. He does not. He is not Caleb Williams. He is not. And I'm not just talking about taking off and running. It's not just about that. But CJ Stroud just sitting back there like, I want to be in the NFL. I don't care about the game. I mean, like, I'm not saying that that's what it's in his mind. I don't want to think that, because he just has that face, where he's kind of just flat. And I'm not saying that when you look flat, because Jalen Hurts at Alabama kind of have that flatness. Even Bryce Young at times appears flat, but his play, it's not about what you look like, it's your play. CJ Stroud at times does not appear to give 110%.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because the guy is great. He's very talented.
Exactly. I mean, you see it with Bryce Young. He gives his 150%,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I never and I like CJ Stroud, but I never understood why anybody had him ahead of Bryce. Because, I mean, we all watch Bryce. I mean, he has the attitude, a great attitude, and he's a great quarterback. And, I think anybody that gets him in the 2023 draft will be very lucky.
The only reason why CJ Stroud is over Bryce Young in most people's eyes at the beginning of the season, and this is why I've talked about this before when I was dogging out Brock Osweiler and I was dogging out Paxton Lynch, it's the size. Who gives a flip if you're 6 foot versus 6'4" or 5"? It don't matter. CJ Stroud is a great quarterback, but Bryce Young plays better more often than CJ Stroud. Gives 110% or 150, as Jackson said, more often than CJ Stroud. Michigan, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Michigan, that was an easy win. It was easy. It wasn't like last year where it was a dogfight. And even though Michigan pulled away, this was an easy win. Michigan, it was easy. It was almost like beating Indiana. It was just easy. They just like, well, Ohio State's not playing very hard. We'll just pop them over the top. And it's like the secondary was like blown away that J.J. McCarthy could throw the ball. And it's almost like, let's make J.J. McCarthy look like garbage all year long so he can show up and now he's the best quarterback for the next draft that he's available. No, J.J. McCarthy, I could have made those throws, man. They were easy. Wide spanking open. I feel bad for Ohio State fans that their team did not play that good. It just flat out did not play good at all. They played horrible. They didn't show up for the biggest game of the year. CJ Stroud did not show up for the biggest game of the year. And I agree with Buckeye Mike that Ryan Day should not be on a hot seat list for being 44-5 and having one bad game. That is ridiculous. It is what it is. Michigan played really well. Ohio State played fairly bad. And that's all you can say. Kudos to Michigan. But Ohio State, it's no panic button yet. No panic button.
I will say real quick, because I think Austin might want to touch on the game. The reason CJ came into the season favored to win the Heisman is because of his Rose Bowl performance. And the fact that, in my opinion, in the back of a lot of people's heads that vote for the Heisman, they want to leave Archie Griffin as the only 2-time Heisman winner. But I will say eventually that's going to fall, and somebody is eventually going to win the Heisman for a second time. But the other thing is, I think that there's some turmoil inside the locker room That's like, because the whole freaking pregame was, oh, Michigan, it's an important game for Ohio State. Ohio State's ready. They're going to show up. You know, they had an interview with C.J. Stroud about, oh, man, I studied this film all year. I'm pumped. My mom, if you talk to my mom, she tell you when she calls if I don't pick up, she knows I'm in the film room studying the film. It's like, dude, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All that matters is your performance on the field, because I'm sorry. I hope you have a good NFL career if you get to have one. And that's not a knock on you. It's just hard to make it in the pros.
Mm-hmm.
But, dude, there are things that fundamentally have to change with you. You have to prep for real. You have to show up in these games. You need to just wipe the slate clean and start over completely.
Two things about what you just said. Number one, Bryce Young, your point about not winning the Heisman back-to-back, Bryce Young couldn't win it because he would miss that game. Missing one game can do it for you. That's why he had no shot. Plus, they had a worse season than usual, but that's why he had no shot, because of the fact he missed a game and a half. And that basically already took him out of it because he couldn't put the stats up. Number two, about your point with, C.J. Stroud having a great NFL career, and this is not a knock on Ohio State, but Ohio State has underwhelmed in the last 15 years with quarterbacks in the NFL. They suck in the NFL. I'm sorry. They suck. They are horrible. Justin Fields is the absolute best quarterback that Ohio State's had in the NFL in the last 15 years. And he's on a bad team, and he's running for his life. And he's not going to make it 5 years if he keeps running for his life. So Ohio State quarterbacks, they peak in college for some reason. In the NFL, they're just bad. I don't understand why, but they're awful. And Alabama, until recently, was the same way. Their quarterbacks in the NFL were garbage too. But now you've got Hurts, and you've got Tua, and you've got Mac. So it's like, I see this. Alabama's always been a quarterback. Remember when you had Greg McElroy, and remember when you had Blake Sims, and you remember when you had A.J. McCarron, and you remember when you had Jake Coker? No, you were not always a quarterback factory. You were horrible. So Ohio State hasn't found a way to make their quarterbacks in college be great in the pros. They've all been bad. Alabama's finally there.
Mm-hmm. The biggest thing out of this game is that Ryan Day just needs to change his scheme. He fits better as a positional coach, and I don't want this freaking stupid term carryover coach. He's not a carryover coach. He was handpicked by Urban Meyer, and whatever he did impressed the university as well to be like, okay, we agree with Urban. You're the next coach. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been. I get his specialty is a quarterback, and he's developed Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace, and he developed Justin Fields. Two good quarterbacks. Now, the interesting thing, and I know I'm looking ahead, but the interesting thing will be Kyle McCord, because I think Kyle McCord really is a better quarterback than C.J. Stroud. He is a 5-star. He went to the same school as MH2, Marvin Harrison Jr. And, it's just going to be interesting. That's all I'm going to say. I'm looking forward to it, but I know I'm jumping ahead.
How do you feel about, I got to say, when you talk about the quarterbacks, and Quinn Ewers, man, $1 million going 1 year, bolts the text. That still bugs me somehow. I don't know.
On that, I will say this. I liked Quinn Ewers. I wanted to see him play. He was one of my favorites at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
I hope Arch takes your job next year. You don't deserve the starting spot anywhere because you don't run like a chicken. Why do you think Tate Martell doesn't exist in football anymore? He ran his mouth about Justin Fields transferring here and saying you don't get to come in and just be the starter, basically. No, that ain't how it works. You got to earn it every time. Guess what, Tate? Yeah, you were good, but Justin was better.
Tate Martell, that guy that ended up at UNLV or something like that?
He went to Miami.
Then UNLV.
Yeah.
I thought it was Miami because I kept thinking about that guy they had. What was that dude? Wasn't he like Spanish or something too? Who was that guy? You remember at Miami? Oh my
Derek
God.
King?
No. God, man. Oh my gosh. I gotta look it up. Joey Foster said, "Dear Miss Young, did you know your kids are still up playing on their YouTube channel stuff?"
James,
The biggest
said,
thing.
it'd be worse. They could be in bed with their phones under covers playing Grand Theft Auto or something.
The biggest thing with me is, like I said, the scheme on Ryan's part needs to change, and he needs to win back the locker room, because at this point, all it is, hey guys, we're playing a team that's not Michigan, so we can get up for this. But the second it's Michigan week, we put our tails between our legs and we run and hide. They had a chance at halftime, and then whatever happened at halftime on Ohio State's side just completely destroyed the whole freaking game.
James Scott, I'm not sure if he's Spanish or not. I have no idea, but Malik Razier, that guy. I don't know.
That's it. Yeah.
That guy. I'm not sure. I'm just trying to find out who he was, see if anybody remember. But Malik Razier, that guy. He was like, people were saying, "Oh, he's gonna lead Miami to the ACC championship, man." And then they played in that game, dude, and he just flat out just blew it. That was, I didn't know. I'm not sure. So again, I'm dumb. So don't blacklist me. I like Malik Razier. I was hoping he could get it done, but it didn't happen, man. Tate Martell didn't happen. N'Kosi Perry didn't happen. Tate Martell didn't happen. Miami's just a quarterback crud factory or whatever you want to call it. It's bad.
You are not a failure. I know you're
thanks.
just kidding, but you're not a failure.
I mean, I have no idea. I didn't know, man. I thought he was. I mean, I don't know.
Hey, I couldn't remember, and I'm the one that doesn't have computer access.
Hey,
Yeah.
couple things, guys, on this game. Michigan, all the credit in the world. No Blake Corum. Everyone was doubting them, saying, "Oh, they haven't won at Ohio State in 22 years," and here they are. They went in and they beat Ohio State. They silenced the doubters, and now that they put that to rest to bed, put that curse to bed. J.J. McCarthy, you're right, Jeffrey. A lot of his passes were wide open, but still, the fact that he made those throws, all credit to J.J. McCarthy. I didn't believe he could do it. By golly, he did it. J.J. McCarthy stepped up in a big moment when the run game wasn't there, because credit Ohio State. They stopped that run game. They stopped it. So kudos to Michigan. Congratulations. You got a date with Purdue. Don't mess it up. As for Ohio State, they need to do some soul searching. Big time. Because you come in with all this hype, like you said, Buckeye Mike, how you're going to fix your mistakes from last year, how you're in the shoe, how CJ Stroud's a Heisman favorite, and then you put up a performance like this. I don't know what it is. Is it just when he plays Michigan is when he does this? I don't know, but it needs to get fixed. And that's all I want to say about the game. Congratulations to Michigan. One Scoop John, if you're still here, hail to the victors, buddy.
Yes, hail
and
to the
congratulations, Michigan. Ohio State, get your act together. You're better than this.
Rozier would have been a great quarterback if throwing the ball to the guy in the 20th row would qualify for a first down. Oh, man.
I want to touch on this real fast.
Ooh.
I still think JJ cannot hit the deep ball. Let me clarify, because he hit some deep balls. What I mean is, I want to see you throw the ball at your receiver deep while he is covered, whether it's double team or triple team. He's not shown that he can do that. He's shown he's got the arm to throw the deep ball. and connect with a wide open receiver. Because let's face it, if Jeffrey could have caught those, I could have caught those. It's like playing backyard football when they're that wide open. That's nothing to go around
And the
bragging
only
about.
way you miss is if you trip on a pine cone or something. Oh my gosh, we got bots, man. Oh man, we gotta get rid of these things. You see it? We got our first bots. We're big now, man. We're big YouTubers.
Wait, what? All I see is Joey's comment. What do you mean?
You don't see it?
I'm just in the StreamYard. I can't.
Yeah,
Hold
I'm
on.
seeing the find.info thing.
Hold on.
Yeah, I'm getting rid of them.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying? We've hit it big time, man. We've got bots now. See, we're
funny
the good
when
guys. We're getting rid of the evil people at 1:53 a.m. Man, come on.
Oh,
I'm just gonna leave it at what I said and probably
Should we get Joey out too, since he's sitting in the beanbag chair with not enough clothes on?
Oh my God! I'm just gonna leave it at what I've said.
okay.
Just to not lose anybody's time. But I probably will release a reaction video in full to thoroughly go through my thoughts. And then if we're done, I don't know if anybody else got the Discord message, but we have an announcement to make. So are we done with the show?
I'm what I'm doing is I'm giving out moderators or whatever. I'm adding some moderators to save our channel from death. Joey and One Scoop John are now moderators. I might even add. We'll see who else we can add on here. Do a couple more people. A couple more of the loyal supporters of our channel.
So, by the grace of God, our boss has decided that our recap show will take place on Monday nights. And that is a final determination from our boss.
Wait a second. Whoa.
I'm just saying, Will sent out a Discord message. My point is, Will has told us in a Discord, or the private way to get a hold of us, that we will now be doing the recap shows on Monday.
Yeah, well, Will was like, man, he told me, like, I think something about doing it on Monday, but I didn't know that he wanted to do it on Monday. I thought that he was saying we can do it next Monday. I didn't know he was saying he wanted to do it this Monday.
Man,
if I read the message right, he wants to do it on Mondays from now on.
Oh, I understand that now. I'm talking about he wrote me something earlier. He was like, we need to start doing it on Mondays, but I didn't know he meant starting with this Monday. So I didn't know. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, obviously, but we'll just have to work it out.
But nonetheless,
it was a great stream. I mean, I guess we're about done. We've gone through every game. The game got the most screen time. We've been talking about the game for like 45 minutes, almost 30 to 45 minutes. I mean, it's well-deserved, though. I mean, it's a huge game. It's a ratings machine. Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, dude, I feel bad for the South Carolina Clemson people, man. I mean, if less people had two TVs on, or the fact that when the Michigan got ahead, then obviously people flipped it over. But, man, it was a great weekend of football, and I'm really looking forward to college, the conference championship week as college football gets to a close and the bowl games are coming, and then it's the end of the season. It's gonna be sad when it's over, but I've had a great time this season, and especially now doing these streams with you guys. It's been awesome.
I'd like to add, if you're new to the channel, make sure you like and subscribe. What are you doing if you haven't yet? Subscribe and like, because we're putting in that hard work over here, gentlemen. Like, make sure you come back, because we'll be doing pick'ems this week for the conference championship. You got LSU, Georgia, Michigan, Purdue, Clemson, North Carolina, Tulane, UCF. subscribe and hit that like and turn on post notification bells so you know when we go live and when we do videos, because you don't want to miss this great content, especially from that man up there, Jeffrey from Only Talk Sports, and Jackson and Buckeye Mike and myself.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Now-
much for that
now-
shout out, Austin. And you might get another shout out next time we're live of another bad quarterback. Malik Razier was this week. So who's it going to be next week?
Now,
next week.
maybe I'm fluffing the pillow too much, but this man up here is a god. This man is a god because of how young he is, and he knows the sport so well. I recommend go watch our lives. I did three. I was supposed to do 4, but I was too tired. I did 3 live stream play-by-plays this past weekend. Go watch as much as you want. Go pop in for a minute, because I think if you're just in there for a minute, it counts as a view for that video. Go pop in there even for a minute and check it out. Go watch this man's videos because you will learn something. If you don't know much about football, you will learn something. If you know a lot about football, the man makes good content. So it's a win-win either way. And plus, he gets more views. And subscribe to all of us. I don't know what I'm going to do this week, but we're going to be popping videos out all week.
Thanks,
So,
Yeah,
Buckeye
we got to
Mike.
pick them for Conference Championship week. And we know the craziness of that. Who knows? Maybe Purdue beats Michigan by 25. Sorry, John. I know you don't want to hear that, but it could happen. Love you, John. You're my favorite, but sorry. Who knows? But make sure you're back here to hear our predictions. Thank you. Love you guys for the support, and go Cards.
Go Bucks and go Blue.
Roll Tide, everybody.
Go every team, I guess.